What if we could finally crack history's greatest unsolved cases with today's technology? Think about it: centuries of unanswered questions, vanished civilizations, and enigmatic disappearances that have baffled historians and archaeologists for generations. We stand at an extraordinary moment in time where cutting-edge science gives us keys to doors we never thought we could open. From artificial intelligence scanning ancient manuscripts to DNA analysis revealing lost family lines, from satellite imagery uncovering buried cities to forensic tools reconstructing historical crime scenes, we now possess capabilities that would seem like pure magic to our ancestors. This isn't just about satisfying curiosity, it's about reclaiming lost chapters of the human story. Today, we're about to dive deep into the past with the tools of the future, exploring 30 historical mysteries that modern technology is poised to solve. Picture the Nazca lines revealing their true purpose through spatial analysis, or the Voynich manuscript giving up its secrets under algorithmic scrutiny. Envision genetic genealogy identifying Jack the Ripper, or LiDAR mapping exposing hidden chambers in the Great Pyramid. These aren't far-fetched fantasies, they're active areas of research where science is closing in on answers. Each mystery represents a puzzle piece of our collective history, and we're closer than ever to fitting them together. So join me on this adventure, a journey through time where technology meets tale, and where the line between legend and fact grows beautifully blurry before coming into stunning focus. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a science lover, or just someone captivated by a good mystery, there's something here to ignite your imagination. By the end of this video, you'll not only discover how close we are to solving these age-old puzzles, you'll also see history not as a static record, but as a living, evolving story that we are still writing, one breakthrough at a time. Our journey into history's greatest puzzles begins with America's oldest cold case, the vanished settlers of the Roanoke Colony. In 1587, a group of 115 English men, women, and children established a settlement on Roanoke Island, led by Governor John White. Soon after their arrival, White sailed back to England for desperately needed supplies, but his return was delayed for 3 years by war. When he finally arrived back on Roanoke Island in 1590, he found the settlement completely abandoned. There were no signs of a struggle, no graves, and the houses had been carefully dismantled, suggesting a planned departure. The only clue left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a post and crow etched into a tree. This was a prearranged code indicating the group had moved to Croatoan Island, now known as Hatteras Island. But a storm prevented White from investigating further, and the fate of the colonists was lost to history, leaving us with 4 centuries of speculation. Did they integrate with the nearby Croatoan tribe? Were they wiped out by disease or conflict, or did they attempt to sail back to England only to be lost at sea? Modern technology is finally providing ways to move beyond theory and find physical evidence. Light detection and ranging, or LiDAR, is a revolutionary tool in this search. Mounted on aircraft, LiDAR uses laser pulses to penetrate dense forest canopies and create incredibly detailed 3-dimensional maps of the ground surface below. Archaeologists could use this technology to sweep the area around the lost colony, searching for the subtle outlines of long-buried fortifications, homestead foundations, or even paths that are invisible to the naked eye. Finding these structural ghosts would give us a precise location to focus a physical dig, potentially uncovering artifacts that tell the story of those final days. Perhaps even more promising is the power of genetic genealogy, the hypothesis that the colonists assimilated with local indigenous communities has persisted for generations. Now we can test it scientifically. Researchers could conduct extensive DNA analysis of present-day descendants of the Croatoan people and other local tribes, looking for specific markers of European ancestry that appeared in the late 16th century. If such lineages are found and can be traced back to that pivotal time period, it would provide powerful evidence that the colonists did not perish but instead were absorbed into the community, their story continuing in a way Governor White could never have imagined. This genetic detective work turns oral history into a data point, offering a chance to finally close the file on a mystery that has haunted America since its very beginning. From a vanished colony, we journey to an ancient architectural marvel that has sparked debate for millennia. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the sole surviving wonder of the ancient world, a breathtaking monument built with such staggering precision that it defies easy explanation. Constructed around 2560 B.C., for the pharaoh Khufu, this colossal structure is composed of approximately 2,300,000 limestone and granite blocks. Each of these stones weighs an average of 2.5 tons, with some of the massive granite slabs in the interior chambers weighing up to a staggering 80 tons. The central mystery is not just the sheer scale, but the incredible accuracy achieved with Bronze Age technology. The pyramid's base is almost a perfect square, aligned to the 4 cardinal directions with an error margin of just a fraction of a degree. How did an ancient society without the wheel, iron tools, or modern machinery achieve such a feat? Theories have ranged from the plausible to the outlandish. The most long-standing idea involves massive ramps, straight, zigzagging, or even spiraling around the pyramid's exterior used to drag the blocks into place. Yet, the logistical challenges of such ramps are immense. A straight ramp long enough to reach the top would have required more material than the pyramid itself. Other suggestions include the use of levers, pulleys, and a highly organized workforce. Then there are the more speculative ideas, from lost advanced technologies to extraterrestrial intervention, all born from a reluctance to believe ancient peoples were capable of such genius. But what if we could finally silence the speculation with cold, hard data? Modern technology offers us a way to look inside the stone without ever lifting a chisel. Three-dimensional laser scanning and photogrammetry are now creating hyper-detailed digital models of the pyramid, inside and out. These models can reveal microscopic cracks, subtle wear patterns, and even the faintest tool marks, providing clues about the types of instruments and techniques used by the builders. Furthermore, non-invasive techniques like muon radiography are being deployed. This ingenious method uses cosmic ray particles that pass through empty space but are absorbed by solid stone. By placing detectors inside the pyramid, scientists can essentially take an X-ray of the structure, revealing hidden chambers, voids, or even internal construction features like sealed-off ramps that have been theorized but never proven. Drones equipped with high-resolution thermal and multispectral cameras are another powerful tool. By surveying the entire Giza plateau from above, they can identify slight variations in the ground's density and temperature, potentially pinpointing the remains of worker settlements, ancient waterways used for transport, or the exact pathways from the quarries to the construction site. This could finally answer the question of how these enormous stones were moved across the desert. Even acoustic testing, using sound waves to map the internal structure of the stone blocks, could detect internal fractures or variations in density that might indicate how they were cut and shaped. Each of these technologies acts as a key, slowly turning the lock on a mystery that has stood for 46 centuries, not to diminish the achievement of the ancient Egyptians, but to truly appreciate the breathtaking magnitude of their human ingenuity. Leaving the sands of Egypt, we cross the sea and travel to the fog-shrouded, gaslit streets of Victorian London, where a shadowy figure forged a legend of terror that endures to this day. In 1888, the impoverished district of Whitacapel was gripped by a series of brutal murders that shocked the world. 5 women, Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were killed in a horrifically specific manner, their murders attributed to the killer the press would dub Jack the Ripper. The case became a media sensation, fueled by the killer's taunting letters sent to the police and the utter failure of Scotland Yard to catch him. The mystery of his identity has spawned over 100 suspects in the century and a half since, from butchers and doctors to royalty and artists, but no name has ever been conclusively proven. The list of proposed culprits is a who's who of Victorian suspicion. There was Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jewish immigrant and barber who was committed to an asylum and was reportedly identified by a witness, though no formal arrest was made. Another suspect, Montague John Drute, was a barrister and teacher who committed suicide shortly after the final murder, making him a convenient candidate for a killer who simply stopped. Then there's the more outlandish theory involving Prince Albert Victor, the grandson of Queen Victoria, in a conspiracy to cover up a scandal. For over 130 years, these names have been argued over with little more than circumstantial evidence and educated guesswork. But the 21st century offers a tool the original investigators could scarcely dream of: the ability to find a genetic fingerprint left behind in the darkness. The key to solving this ultimate cold case may lie in a piece of evidence that was long considered a macabre curiosity: a shawl allegedly found at the scene of Catherine Eddowes' murder. The shawl was acquired by author and amateur sleuth Russell Edwards, who believed it to be authentic. He commissioned a groundbreaking forensic analysis led by Dr. Jari Louhilainen, a molecular biologist. Using cutting-edge techniques, they were able to extract mitochondrial DNA from dried stains on the fabric. Mitochondrial DNA is passed down virtually unchanged from a mother to all her children, making it an excellent tool for tracing maternal lineage across generations. The DNA from the stain was compared to descendants of both Catherine Eddowes and the prime suspect, Aaron Kosminski. The results, first published in 2014, indicated a match pointing towards Kosminski as the man behind the murders. This finding, however, is not the final word. The study has been met with significant scrutiny from the scientific community. Questions have been raised about the shawl's chain of custody over the decades, the potential for contamination, and the specific methods of analysis used. This is where modern technology can move from a single, contested analysis to a definitive answer. Imagine applying the full power of contemporary forensic genetics to this evidence. Next-generation sequencing could provide a much more robust and complete genetic profile than earlier methods allowed. This richer data could then be uploaded to public genealogical databases, the same technology used to identify the Golden State Killer decades after his crimes. Instead of just comparing the DNA to a single suspect's known descendants, investigators could build an extensive family tree from the genetic material, tracing it back through time to find a common ancestor in the 18th or early 19th century, and then forward again to see which male-line descendants were living in London in 1888. This technique could either confirm Aaron Kosminski's presence on that shawl, or it could point to an entirely new, previously unknown individual, finally giving a true name to the shadow that haunted White-Capel. It's a sobering thought that the key to ending history's most infamous murder mystery was not a hidden clue or a deathbed confession, but a microscopic biological signature waiting patiently in a piece of silk for the science to evolve enough to read its story. From the foggy alleys of London, we now journey to the vast, windswept steppes of Mongolia, where one of history's most powerful figures was laid to rest in a secret so profound it has never been broken. Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire, which became the largest contiguous land empire in history, died in 1227. According to legend, to ensure his final resting place remained forever unknown, his loyal funeral procession carried out a series of elaborate and brutal measures. They are said to have killed every person they encountered on the journey to the burial site. After interring the great Khan with immense treasures, they then had 1,000 horses trample the earth over the grave to erase any trace of it. But the most enduring legend claims they diverted a river to flow over the tomb, sealing it for eternity beneath a new waterway. For nearly 800 years, the location has remained one of history's most tantalizing secrets, protected by the sheer scale of the landscape and the deep cultural reverence of the Mongolian people, who consider the area a sacred forbidden zone. The challenge of finding the tomb is immense, not just because of the landscape, but also due to strong cultural taboos. Many Mongolians believe that disturbing the grave would bring about a terrible curse and disrupt the peace of their most revered ancestor. This makes traditional archaeological digs not only difficult but also deeply disrespectful. However, the 21st century offers a suite of non-invasive technologies that could potentially locate the tomb without turning a single shovelful of earth, respecting both the legend and the culture. The search could begin from the heavens. High-resolution satellite imagery and multi-spectral analysis can scan thousands of square miles of remote Mongolian terrain, looking for subtle anthropogenic clues invisible from the ground. Analysts could search for unusual vegetation patterns known as crop marks. If the tomb is surrounded by a buried stone structure or a ditch, the soil composition would be different. This can cause vegetation above to grow either more lushly or more stunted than the surrounding area, creating faint outlines that are best seen from a high altitude, especially during specific growing seasons. This technology has already been used to discover lost Roman forts and ancient settlements, and it could reveal the geometric shape of a hidden funerary complex on the Mongolian steppe. Following these satellite clues, the next step would involve a closer look from the air using drones equipped with sophisticated sensors. LiDAR, which proved so useful in the search for Roanoke, could be mounted on drones to create incredibly detailed topographic maps of candidate sites. In heavily forested or rugged terrain, LiDAR can strip away the vegetation to reveal the bare earth beneath, showing the slightest human-made alterations to the landscape, like the long-eroded remains of that diverted river channel or the leveled platform of a grand tomb that has been smoothed over by centuries of wind and rain. Drones could also carry magnetometers to measure tiny variations in the Earth's magnetic field. A large burial site containing metal artifacts, weapons, treasure, or ceremonial objects would create a distinct local magnetic anomaly that a magnetometer could detect from the air. If these aerial surveys identify a promising location, the final confirmation could come from ground-penetrating radar or GPR. This technology is like giving the Earth an ultrasound. Researchers would slowly walk a GPR unit over the site, which sends radio waves into the ground. These waves bounce back differently when they encounter changes in density, like a buried wall, a chamber, or even voids. The returning signals are compiled into a three-dimensional map of the subsurface, revealing the layout of any hidden structures without any digging whatsoever. A GPR scan could potentially map out an entire burial complex, showing the entrance passages, main chamber, and any accompanying graves, finally revealing whether the legend of the river is true. This combination of satellite, aerial drone, and ground-based technology represents a revolutionary shift in archaeology, moving from destructive digging to delicate listening, allowing us to finally find Genghis Khan's tomb by honoring the wish for it to remain forever untouched. While the tomb of Genghis Khan represents a hidden location, our next mystery is a hidden function, locked within the most astonishing artifact ever recovered from the ancient world. In 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman cargo ship dating back to the 1st century B.C. Among the statues, jewelry, and pottery recovered was a lump of corroded bronze and wood that seemed utterly unremarkable. It was only years later, as the object began to crumble, that archaeologists saw the truth. It was an intricate clockwork machine, a complex arrangement of precisely cut bronze gears housed in a wooden frame. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, and it was so advanced that it fundamentally shattered our understanding of ancient technological capability. Dated to around 2,000 years ago, it was a device that should not have existed for another millennium. For decades, its exact purpose was debated by historians and scientists. It was clearly an astronomical instrument of some kind, but the sheer density of its miniaturized gears, some with teeth cut with microscopic precision, defied complete comprehension. The main theories suggested it was a planetarium, a device for calculating the motions of the sun, moon, and known planets against the backdrop of the zodiac. Others believed it could predict eclipses or was used to set the dates for religious festivals and athletic games like the Olympics. The mechanism was even equipped with a dial that followed the 4-year cycle of these games. The problem was that the device was too fragile to take apart. Its secrets were locked inside, obscured by centuries of corrosion and calcification, and we lacked the tools to see inside without destroying it. That is, until now, modern imaging technology has finally given us a key to this ancient lock. High-resolution, three-dimensional X-ray computed tomography, or CT scanning, has been a game-changer. This process involves taking thousands of razor-thin digital slices of the object, which a computer then assembles into a precise three-dimensional model. Researchers can then digitally peel away the layers of corrosion, rotate the model in any direction, and examine the deepest, most inaccessible gears without ever touching the physical artifact. This has already revealed hidden inscriptions and gear functions that were completely invisible to previous generations of scholars, but we are on the cusp of learning so much more. The next step involves applying sophisticated pattern recognition software and artificial intelligence to the CT scan data. These algorithms can be trained to identify and reconstruct faint, fragmented Greek letters etched onto the mechanism's many bronze plates and dials. These inscriptions are essentially the device's user manual, and fully decoding them is the single most important step to understanding its complete operation. AI could piece together broken words and phrases, suggesting the most probable original text and translating it instantly. This would tell us unequivocally what each dial and pointer was meant to show. Furthermore, advanced kinematic modeling software allows researchers to create a perfect digital twin of the mechanism. They can simulate turning the input crank and watch how every single gear interacts in real time, observing the complex mathematical relationships between them. This digital testing ground allows for incredible experimentation. Scientists can test hypotheses by virtually adding a missing gear or changing a ratio to see if the output on the dials more accurately reflects known astronomical cycles. This process could reveal if the mechanism was even more sophisticated than we currently believe, perhaps capable of tracking the irregular orbits of planets with a high degree of accuracy using intricate epicyclic gearing that mimics the celestial mechanics proposed by the ancient astronomer Hipparchus. The ultimate goal is a complete digital reconstruction, an interactive model that anyone can explore, which would finally lay bare the full genius of its ancient Greek creators. Solving the mystery of the Antikythera mechanism doesn't just tell us what a single device did. It rewrites the history of science and technology, revealing a line of sophisticated mechanical reasoning in the ancient world that was lost for centuries, only to be rediscovered through the very technology it presaged. Moving from the intricate gears of the Antikythera mechanism, we now turn to a mystery woven from gold leaf and fossilized resin. A treasure so magnificent it was dubbed the eighth wonder of the world, the Amber Room. Originally crafted in Prussia in the early 18th century, this astonishing chamber was a Baroque masterpiece. Its walls were adorned with over 6 tons of meticulously carved amber panels, backed with gold leaf and inlaid with precious mirrors and gemstones, creating a space that glowed with a warm, magical light. In 1716, the panels were gifted to Tsar Peter the Great of Russia and later installed in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, where they remained a breathtaking symbol of opulence for over 200 years. The room's fate took a dark turn with the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union during World War II. Recognizing its immense cultural and material value, German troops specifically targeted the Catherine Palace in 1941. They dismantled the entire room with chilling efficiency, packed the panels into crates, and shipped them to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, a city now known as Kaliningrad, Russia. The panels were put on display there for the remainder of the war, but as Allied bombs began to rain down on the city in 1944, the order was given to pack the treasure away once more for safekeeping. This is the last confirmed sighting of the Amber Room in its entirety. As the Red Army stormed the city in 1945, the crates had simply vanished, leaving behind a void filled with decades of speculation, obsession, and intrigue. Theories about its final resting place are as numerous as they are compelling. The most persistent belief is that the crates never left Königsberg and were hidden in a secret bunker or tunnel system beneath the city, possibly even within the extensive catacombs of the largely destroyed castle itself. Other theories suggest the treasure was loaded onto a ship, such as the Wilhelm Gustloff, which was sunk by a Soviet submarine in the Baltic Sea, consigning the amber to a watery grave. Some even speculate it was destroyed in the fierce artillery fire that leveled Königsberg, its priceless panels reduced to smoke and ash. For over 75 years, these possibilities have fueled an international treasure hunt, but the sheer scale of the search area and the passage of time have left the mystery frustratingly intact. Modern technology, however, is providing a new set of eyes with which to scan the Earth and see for this lost wonder. The search could begin where the trail goes cold, the modern-day city of Kaliningrad. While the historic Königsberg Castle was largely demolished after the war, its extensive subterranean foundations and rumored network of bunkers and tunnels likely remain buried beneath the modern city square. This is a perfect application for ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. Archaeologists could systematically survey the entire area, sending electromagnetic pulses into the ground. These waves would bounce back, creating detailed three-dimensional sonar maps of any voids, chambers, or man-made structures hidden deep below the pavement and soil. A sudden, large, rectangular anomaly detected 30 feet underground could signal the presence of the long-lost crates, waiting to be unearthed. For a broader search of the surrounding countryside and the possible location of forgotten Nazi bunkers, LiDAR is the ideal tool. Mounted on aircraft or drones, LiDAR could strip away the dense forest canopy that has grown over the decades, revealing the subtle, ghostly impressions of earthworks, buried railway spurs, or the overgrown entrances to fortified installations that are invisible from the ground. Aerial magnetometry could complement this search by detecting large concentrations of metal, perhaps the nails and fasteners from wooden crates or even metal support structures within a hidden room. That would create a distinct magnetic signature against the natural geology of the region. And for the theory that the Amber Room rests at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, underwater archaeology has been revolutionized by autonomous underwater vehicles, or OVs. These robotic subs, equipped with side-scan sonar and high-resolution cameras, could meticulously map the seafloor around known wreck sites like the Wilhelm Gustloff. Advanced sonar can distinguish between the metal hull of a ship and other, more organic cargo, potentially identifying the distinct shapes of stacked crates amidst the debris field. If a promising target is located, remotely operated vehicles with delicate manipulator arms could be sent down to investigate without the high risk and cost of human divers, finally answering whether one of history's most beautiful treasures was lost to the deep. Each of these technologies offers a non-invasive way to pursue a legend, turning whispered stories of hidden bunkers into concrete data and bringing us closer than ever to restoring a glittering piece of our collective cultural heritage. While the Amber Room represents a physical treasure lost to war, our next enigma is a treasure of knowledge locked away in an indecipherable code. The Voynich manuscript is perhaps the most stubbornly mysterious book in the world. This 240-page vellum codex, carbon dated to the early 15th century in northern Italy, is filled from edge to edge with an unknown script, flowing text written in characters that belong to no known alphabet. Its pages are abundantly illustrated with bizarre, otherworldly drawings. Naked women bathing in strange green tubs connected by intricate plumbing, unidentifiable botanical specimens with root systems that look almost alien, astrological diagrams featuring unfamiliar constellations, and complex cosmological charts of swirling, interconnected spheres. It is a beautiful, bewildering, and utterly impenetrable puzzle that has resisted the world's greatest cryptographers, linguists, and scholars for over a century. Since its rediscovery in 1912 by rare book dealer Wilfred Voynich, the manuscript has been a siren's call for codebreakers. Both amateur sleuths and professional cryptanalysts, including teams from World War II who successfully cracked Japanese and Nazi ciphers, have thrown their best efforts at it, and all have failed spectacularly. The text possesses statistical properties of a genuine language. It follows Zipf's law, where a few words are used very frequently, while most are used rarely, yet it matches no known tongue on Earth. This has led to a fractious debate between two main camps. One believes it is a cipher, a known language like Latin or a vernacular tongue that was deliberately enciphered to protect secret knowledge, perhaps related to alchemy or early medicine. The other camp argues it is a glossolalia, a constructed language or an elaborate hoax crafted to deceive a wealthy patron, a meaningless series of symbols that merely mimics the structure of real communication. For decades, this debate has raged in a stalemate, with theories ranging from the plausible to the fantastical. Some have proposed it was written by a young Leonardo da Vinci as a complex cipher, though the carbon dating disproves this. Others suggest it is the sole surviving example of a lost language, perhaps even a proto-Romance language. The hoax theory, too, has its proponents who point to the bizarre, seemingly nonsensical plants and the repetitive nature of the words as evidence of a clever forgery. The problem has always been the human brain itself. A cryptographer brings their own biases and assumptions to the task, trying to force the text to fit a preconceived pattern. What we need is a completely objective analyst, one that can process the entire manuscript in seconds without fatigue or preconception. This is where 21st century artificial intelligence enters the fray. Modern machine learning offers our first real hope of a breakthrough. Unlike human researchers, AI algorithms can analyze the entire manuscript's 240 pages at once, processing every character, word, and sentence to find patterns far too subtle for the human eye to detect. The process would begin by feeding the AI high-resolution digital scans of every page. Advanced optical character recognition would then map each unique symbol, creating a flawless digital transcript. From there, sophisticated natural language processing algorithms would get to work. They would perform an exhaustive statistical analysis, examining word frequency, word order, and the contextual relationships between symbols. They could identify if certain characters consistently appear at the beginning or end of words, much like prefixes or suffixes in real languages, which would be a powerful indicator of grammatical rules. The most exciting application involves using the AI for cross-linguistic analysis. Researchers could train the algorithm on the grammatical and syntactic patterns of hundreds of known languages, from ancient Hebrew and Latin to medieval Arabic and early German dialects. The AI could then run the Voynich text against all these linguistic models simultaneously, searching for statistical parallels or hidden structural similarities that might point to a root language. It wouldn't be looking for a direct translation, but for a ghost of a pattern, a shared rhythmic DNA that could finally connect this strange script to a known human language family. Furthermore, AI could analyze the illustrations with computer vision, cross-referencing the bizarre plants with global botanical databases or comparing the astronomical charts to known medieval cosmologies, potentially providing context that helps decipher the text describing them. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that the AI might conclude the manuscript is neither a cipher nor a hoax, but something else entirely. Its analysis could reveal that the text is too structured to be random nonsense, yet too unique to be a simple encoding of a known language. This could point toward a more complex reality, such as a constructed philosophical language, an early attempt to create a universal written code, or even the recorded output of a dream state or altered consciousness. The greatest contribution of AI may not be providing a simple translation, but finally giving us a definitive answer on the very nature of the manuscript's language itself, closing one door of speculation so that we can open another, better informed one in our quest to understand this captivating relic from the past. The mystery surrounding the young pharaoh Tutankhamun has captivated the world since his nearly intact tomb was discovered in 1922. He became pharaoh around the age of 9 and ruled for only about a decade before his sudden death around 1323 BC, leaving behind a tomb filled with unimaginable treasures but very few clues about his life's abrupt end. For decades, the primary clue was a simple one, a small, embalming wound near his left ear noted by the original excavators. This singular detail, combined with his youth, fueled endless speculation. Was the boy king the victim of a malicious plot, or did he succumb to a tragic accident? The theories have been as dramatic as they are varied, turning his death into history's most royal cold case. The most enduring theory, popularized by early X-rays of his mummy, was murder. The X-rays seemed to show bone fragments within his skull, leading to the sensational idea that he had been killed by a blow to the head, perhaps by his powerful advisor Ai or his general Hormheb, both of whom succeeded him as pharaoh. Another suspect was his immediate predecessor, the mysterious pharaoh Akhenaten, or even his own queen, Ankhesenamun. However, more recent analysis has cast doubt on this. The bone fragments are now believed to be the result of either damage during the original mummification process or, more likely, the careless handling of his remains by the 1922 excavation team. With the murder theory losing its most compelling evidence, other explanations have risen to take its place. A prominent alternative suggests a tragic chariot accident. Examinations of his mummy have revealed a severe fracture to his left knee, which occurred just before death, and a crushed rib cage. This paints a horrifying picture. Perhaps the young pharaoh was thrown from a speeding chariot, suffering catastrophic injuries that led to a fatal infection or immediate death. Supporting this is the fact that he was buried with an astonishing number of walking sticks and canes, suggesting he may have had a pre-existing mobility issue, making him more susceptible to a bad fall. Others have proposed that he died from complications of a broken leg, perhaps from malaria or another infectious disease that took advantage of his weakened state. Until recently, these have all been educated guesses based on incomplete evidence, but modern forensic science offers a path to definitive answers. The key to solving this 3,300-year-old mystery lies in a full re-examination of his remains using the most advanced non-invasive technology available today. A high-resolution, full-body computed tomography, or CT, scan could provide a microscopic view of his skeleton. This wouldn't be a simple X-ray. It would create a three-dimensional digital model of every single bone, allowing forensic pathologists to examine each fracture in incredible detail. They could distinguish between perimortem injuries, those that occurred at or near the time of death, and post-mortem damage caused by embalmers or archaeologists. The precise angle of a fracture could reveal the direction of a crushing impact, potentially confirming or ruling out a chariot accident. A CT scan could also reveal previously unseen microfractures or healing patterns, telling us if an injury was days or hours old when he died. But the investigation wouldn't stop with his bones. The real revolution would come from a full genetic and biochemical analysis of his mummified tissues. Advanced DNA sequencing could identify the presence of ancient pathogens, searching for the genetic fingerprints of malaria, tuberculosis, or other devastating diseases that were common in the ancient world. This could finally confirm if he was suffering from a debilitating illness that contributed to his death. Even more revealing would be a toxicological analysis using techniques like mass spectrometry. Scientists could test his hair, nails, and skin for traces of heavy metals or organic poons. If he was indeed murdered by a rival, traces of a toxic substance like henbane or hemlock might still be preserved within his body after millennia, providing the ultimate smoking gun. By combining the skeletal evidence from a CT scan with the pathological evidence from genetic and chemical tests, we could move from speculation to a modern medical diagnosis. We could know if he died from a gangrenous infection in a broken leg, a brain hemorrhage from a head injury, a purposeful poisoning, or a virulent disease. The story of King Tut's death is not just about satisfying historical curiosity. It's about understanding the brutal realities of life and power in ancient Egypt. Solving this mystery would close the book on one of history's greatest whodunits, giving a voice to a young king who has been silent for over 30 centuries and finally revealing the true story written in his very cells. Leaving behind the cryptic pages of the Voynich manuscript, we travel to the arid plains of southern Peru, where one of humanity's most monumental and enigmatic art projects stretches across the desert floor. The Nazca lines are a breathtaking collection of hundreds of giant geoglyphs etched into the earth between 500 B.C. and 500 A.D. These are not small drawings. They depict sprawling geometric shapes, immense trapezoids, perfectly straight lines that run for miles, and elaborate figures of animals like a hummingbird, a spider, a monkey, and even a massive orca whale. The sheer scale is what makes them so mysterious. These designs are so vast that their forms can only be fully appreciated from the sky, from an altitude that the Nazca people themselves could never have achieved. This simple fact has fueled endless speculation about their purpose, from landing strips for extraterrestrial visitors to giant astronomical calendars. The leading theories among archaeologists are far more grounded yet equally fascinating. The most widely accepted idea is that the lines held deep religious and ritual significance. They may have been sacred pathways walked during ceremonies to pray for water and fertile crops in an incredibly dry environment. The act of creating them, of removing the dark, sun-baked top layer of stones to reveal the lighter, chalky soil beneath, could have been a form of devotion in itself. Another compelling theory suggests the geoglyphs functioned as a massive astronomical observatory, with certain lines pointing toward the rising and setting sun during solstices or highlighting specific constellations important to Nazca cosmology. However, proving any of these theories has been incredibly difficult due to the fragile and vast nature of the site. Modern technology, however, is finally giving us the tools to walk these sacred paths without taking a single step on the delicate desert surface. The investigation begins with an armada of drones equipped with high-resolution photogrammetry and multispectral cameras. By flying precise grid patterns over the entire 450 square kilometer area, these drones can capture millions of overlapping photographs. Powerful software then stitches these images together to create a three-dimensional digital map of the entire plateau with centimeter-level accuracy. This hyper-detailed model allows researchers to study the lines in ways never before possible. They can take virtual measurements of the trench's depth and width, analyze the precise angles of the geometric shapes, and even simulate the erosion patterns over centuries to understand how the glyphs were initially constructed. This data can reveal if the Nazca used standardized units of measurement or if different glyphs were built by separate family groups, showing a social organization behind this massive undertaking. Beyond mere mapping, scientists are now using advanced soil analysis to solve the mystery of how these precise figures were made. Using a portable X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, researchers can take readings of the soil directly on the lines and compare it to the soil just a few feet away. This can detect subtle differences in mineral composition that persist 2,000 years later, revealing the specific tools or techniques used to break up the dark surface layer of iron oxide-coated pebbles. Did they use simple wooden stakes and ropes to plot out the designs? The soil chemistry might hold the answer. Furthermore, studying the compacted layers of soil within the trenches can help us understand the construction sequence and how many people were involved in this colossal community effort. Perhaps the most revolutionary tool is the application of virtual reality. By importing the incredibly detailed drone maps into a VR environment, archaeologists and historians can literally step inside a perfect simulation of the Nazca Desert at any point in its history. They can witness the lines at their pristine best moments after they were completed. They can then use the simulation to test the astronomical theory by fast-forwarding through decades of solstices and equinoxes, watching from ground level to see if key lines truly align with celestial events in a way that would be meaningful to a ritual participant. This ground-level perspective is crucial. It moves us beyond the modern aerial view and asks what the experience was like for the people who made them. VR allows us to walk the pathways during a thunderstorm or at dawn, seeing if the angles of the trapezoids channel water or catch the light in a specific way, potentially revealing a purpose that is completely invisible from a satellite. This combination of drone mapping, soil forensics, and immersive simulation doesn't just seek to answer how the Nazca lines were built, but why. It helps us understand them not as a mystery for outsiders to solve, but as a profound expression of faith and ingenuity, a message not for the gods above, but from a people deeply connected to the earth beneath their feet. From the vast desert glyphs drawn for the gods, we plunge into the depths of the sea in search of history's most legendary lost civilization. The story of Atlantis begins with the Greek philosopher Plato, who around 360 B.C. described it in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. He wrote of a powerful and advanced island kingdom that existed some 9,000 years before his own time, placing its peak around 9,600 B.C. According to Plato, Atlantis was a naval power that lay in front of the Pillars of Hercules, which we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was a circular paradise of concentric rings of water and land, rich in precious metals and populated by a noble, technologically sophisticated people. Their downfall was their own hubris. After a failed attempt to conquer Athens, the entire island was struck by violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, it sank beneath the waves, vanishing forever. For centuries, this tale has been the ultimate historical rabbit hole. Some scholars believe Plato was crafting an allegory about the dangers of imperial overreach, using a fictional kingdom to make a philosophical point. Others are convinced he was recording a genuine, though perhaps embellished, historical event. This belief has launched 1,000 searches and spawned countless proposed locations. Some look to the Mediterranean, suggesting the Minoan civilization on Santorini, which was largely destroyed by a cataclysmic volcanic eruption around 1600 B.C. Others point to the Dogger Bank in the North Sea, an area once above water that was flooded by rising seas. There are theories placing it in the Caribbean, near the Azores, or even in Antarctica. The sheer number of possibilities shows how powerful the legend is, but it also highlights the need for a scientific approach to move beyond mere speculation. The open question remains: if Atlantis was a real place, could we find its physical footprint on the ocean floor? This is where modern marine geology and satellite technology enter the picture, transforming a myth into a potentially solvable archaeological puzzle. The first and most promising tool is multi-beam sonar mapping. Research vessels and autonomous underwater vehicles can now systematically scan vast sections of the Atlantic seafloor, sending out sound waves to create staggeringly detailed three-dimensional topographical maps. These maps can reveal anomalies that are utterly unnatural: straight lines, right angles, and geometric patterns that stand out against the random chaos of the natural seabed. A team could program an AUV to sweep the Atlantic plains west of Gibraltar, searching for the distinct concentric circles Plato described. Finding such a formation under 2 or 3 miles of water would instantly become the archaeological discovery of the millennium. But sonar can only tell us about the shape of the seafloor. To understand what lies beneath it, scientists would employ sub-bottom profilers. This technology uses a lower frequency sound wave that can penetrate several meters into the seabed sediment. It acts like an underwater ultrasound, revealing buried layers and any hidden structures that might be completely covered by millennia of silt and sand. If the ruins of Atlantis were buried rather than sitting exposed, a sub-bottom profiler could detect the ghostly outlines of walls, foundations, or canals without ever bringing a shovel to the ocean floor. The next step would be to take a physical sample of any promising site using advanced core sampling. A ship could lower a long, hollow tube to drill deep into the seabed and extract a cylindrical core of sediment. By analyzing the layers of this core, scientists could read the area's history like a book. They could look for a distinct layer of volcanic ash, which would support the Thera-Santorini hypothesis, or a layer of rubble and building materials like worked stone or plaster. Most telling would be a horizon within the core that shows a dramatic change, perhaps a layer of terrestrial soil filled with freshwater pollen and seeds, abruptly covered by deep sea sediments. This would be the smoking gun, evidence that this specific patch of the Atlantic was once dry land that catastrophically sank, precisely as Plato described. Finally, satellite altimetry could provide the big picture view needed to guide the search. These satellites use radar to measure the minute variations in the height of the ocean surface. Because water mounds slightly over massive underwater features like mountains and seamounts due to gravity, these satellites can effectively map the topography of the ocean floor from space. By analyzing this data, researchers could identify large, submerged plateaus that were once islands, especially around the mid-Atlantic ridge where tectonic activity could have caused a landmass to rise and fall. This technology wouldn't find a city, but it could pinpoint the most likely locations for a lost island civilization, giving sonar-equipped ships a much smaller and more promising area to focus on. The quest for Atlantis is no longer a fantasy. It is a multidisciplinary scientific investigation that uses the ocean's own secrets to finally determine if Plato was recording a profound truth at the bottom of the sea. Moving from the vast, sun-scorched lines of Nazca, we now turn our attention to a mystery that is both intimately human and deeply spiritual, a single piece of linen that has inspired faith, skepticism, and scientific debate in equal measure for centuries. The Shroud of Turin is a 14-foot-long, 3.5-foot-wide piece of cloth, bearing the faint, haunting, double imprint of a man who appears to have suffered crucifixion. The image shows the front and back of a bearded figure with wounds consistent with the biblical accounts of Jesus of Nazareth, lacerations from a scourging, a puncture in the wrist consistent with a nail, and what appears to be a stab wound in the chest. For many of the faithful, this is not a mere representation. It is the actual burial shroud of Christ, a divine relic that captured his image at the moment of resurrection. For skeptics, it is a masterful medieval forgery, a clever piece of artwork created to attract pilgrims and their donations. The central question is as profound as it is simple. How was this image created and when? The debate reached a fever pitch in 1988 when the Vatican permitted a small sample of the shroud to be subjected to radiocarbon dating by 3 independent laboratories. The results, published in the journal Nature, dated the cloth to between 1260 and 1390. For many, this was the final word, a definitive proof that the shroud was a medieval creation. However, this conclusion only served to deepen the mystery, as it failed to explain how a medieval forger could have created such a complex and scientifically anomalous image. The carbon dating itself has since come under intense scrutiny. Critics point to the sample location, suggesting it was taken from a medieval patch woven into the cloth during repairs after a fire, not from the original fabric. They also highlight potential contamination from centuries of handling, smoke from fires, and even bacterial biofilm that could have skewed the carbon isotopes, making the linen appear hundreds of years younger than it truly is. This is precisely where modern technology can cut through decades of argument and provide new, more reliable data. The first step would be to conduct a new, vastly improved radiocarbon dating analysis. Today's accelerated mass spectrometry technology is far more sensitive and requires a much smaller sample than the walnut-sized piece cut in 1988. Scientists could take microsamples from multiple, pristine locations on the shroud, including areas untouched by human hands or fire damage. They could also use advanced pre-treatment protocols to meticulously clean the samples of all potential contaminants, oils, waxes, smoke, and bacteria, isolating only the pure cellulose of the flax fibers themselves. This would give us a much clearer and potentially different date, one that could finally lay the carbon dating controversy to rest, but dating the cloth is only half the battle. The greater mystery is the image itself. How was it formed? It is not painted, there is no pigment, no dye, and no brush strokes. The coloration resides only on the very topmost microfibers of the threads, a phenomenon impossible to replicate with any known medieval artistic technique. The image also possesses unique three-dimensional information. When the intensity of the image is read by a sophisticated device called a VP8 image analyzer, it translates the light and dark areas into vertical relief, producing a perfect, coherent three-dimensional statue of a human body, something no two-dimensional painting can do. This suggests the image was formed by a precise, momentary burst of energy that caused a rapid dehydration and oxidation of the cellulose fibers, a process akin to a very subtle scorching. To understand this, scientists would now employ hyperspectral imaging. This technology goes far beyond normal photography by capturing images at hundreds of different wavelengths of light, from ultraviolet to infrared. Each material reflects light in a unique spectral signature. By analyzing the shroud with this technique, researchers could create a precise chemical map of the entire cloth, identifying the exact molecular composition of the image fibers versus the non-image background. This could definitively rule out artistic substances and potentially identify the specific chemical changes that cause the discoloration. Furthermore, using powerful three-dimensional digital microscopes, researchers could perform a virtual autopsy of individual image fibers at a microscopic level. They could create high-resolution models to study the exact depth of the coloration and any other microscopic features, like pollen grains or mineral deposits trapped in the weave. Some researchers have found traces of limestone common to Jerusalem and pollen from plants native to the Middle East, which they argue supports an ancient origin. A new, exhaustive analysis with modern equipment could either confirm these findings as authentic or reveal them as later contaminants. The combination of refined carbon dating, hyperspectral chemical analysis, and microscopic imaging represents our best chance to move beyond the cycle of belief and disbelief, replacing it with empirical evidence that tells us, once and for all, the true story of this enigmatic and captivating cloth. Yet another kind of mystery haunts the vast expanse of the ocean, one where the vessel remains but its human soul has vanished without a trace. In December 1872, the British merchant ship De Gracia spotted another brigantine, the Mary Celeste, adrift aimlessly off the coast of the Azores. Though her sails were partially set and she appeared seaworthy, something was profoundly wrong. Upon boarding, the crew of the De Gracia found the ship completely deserted. The captain, Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and the entire crew of 7 were gone. They had vanished into thin air. The ship's single lifeboat was missing, but almost everything else remained eerily intact. There was a 6-month supply of food and fresh water in the hold. The crew's personal belongings were still in their quarters, and the cargo of industrial alcohol was largely undisturbed. It was as if the people had simply evaporated, leaving behind a perfectly functional ship. The only clues were a few feet of water in the bilge, a disassembled pump, and a sword cut on the railing. The logbook's final entry, dated 10 days earlier, noted nothing amiss, making the silence that followed even more deafening. For a century and a half, the fate of the Mary Celeste's crew has been the ultimate maritime puzzle, spawning theories that range from the plausible to the utterly fantastic. The original Admiralty Court suspected mutiny, but there was no evidence of a struggle or violence. Others proposed a pirate attack, but the valuable cargo and personal effects were left untouched. More imaginative minds have suggested sea monsters, alien abductions, or an attack by the mythical giant squid. More grounded hypotheses include a sudden waterspout or a minor seaquake that startled the crew into believing the ship was about to sink, prompting a panicked, premature abandonment in the lifeboat. Another compelling theory involves the cargo itself, nearly 2,000 barrels of raw alcohol. If a few barrels had leaked, fumes could have built up in the hold, leading to fears of an imminent explosion. Captain Briggs, known to be cautious, might have ordered everyone into the lifeboat as a temporary safety measure, tethered to the ship. A sudden gust of wind could then have snapped the line, leaving them adrift as the perfectly sound Mary Celeste sailed away without them, condemning them to the merciless Atlantic. While these theories are compelling, modern technology offers a way to move beyond speculation and find physical evidence on the seafloor. The final resting place of the Mary Celeste is known. After its ghostly encounter, it changed hands numerous times before being deliberately wrecked on a Haitian reef in 1885 as part of an insurance scam. The wreck site, though scattered, likely still holds secrets. This is a perfect mission for advanced underwater drones equipped with high-resolution side-scan sonar and magnetometers. These autonomous vehicles could perform a meticulous, grid-based survey of the entire reef area, mapping every piece of debris. The sonar would distinguish the wooden hull fragments from the natural coral and rock, while the magnetometer could locate any large metal objects like the ship's stove, anchors, or the iron supports for the water pumps that survived. By creating a detailed photomosaic of the site, archaeologists could potentially find the disassembled pump mentioned in the original inquiry, which might show signs of why it was taken apart, or even locate the ship's safe, which could still hold the captain's logbook with entries beyond the last known date. Perhaps even more revealing than the wreck itself would be a historical climate model of the North Atlantic for that precise period in November 1872. By digitizing old ship logs, weather station records, and barometric readings from the era, scientists could use powerful supercomputers to run a retrospective weather simulation. This digital time machine could recreate the specific atmospheric conditions the Mary Celeste encountered with astonishing accuracy. It could tell us if a sudden, localized microburst or a rogue wave of unprecedented size was generated in that exact corridor of the ocean. It could pinpoint the occurrence of a waterspout or the seismic activity of a minor, unnoticed seaquake. By cross-referencing this model with the ship's last logged position and its drift course when found, we could virtually sail alongside the Mary Celeste and witness the exact meteorological drama that unfolded, finally understanding the environmental pressures that may have triggered that fateful and ultimately fatal decision to abandon a perfectly sound ship. While the Mary Celeste represents a mystery of a crew lost to the sea, our next puzzle is a seemingly mundane object that, if proven true, would fundamentally rewrite the history of technology. In 1936, workers excavating an ancient Parthian village near Baghdad in modern-day Iraq uncovered a most peculiar artifact. It was a small, 5-inch-long clay jar dating from between 250 B. c. and 225 AD, inside this unassuming vessel was a rolled-up copper sheet housing an iron rod. The jar was sealed with an asphalt plug, which also acted as an insulator, holding both metal pieces in place without letting them touch. When German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig examined it, he proposed an astonishing theory. This was no ordinary storage jar. He believed it was an ancient galvanic cell, a primitive battery. If filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, the electrolyte would allow a chemical reaction between the dissimilar metals, generating a small electrical current. The implications are staggering, suggesting a knowledge of electricity more than a millennium before its official discovery. The primary theory for its use is electroplating. The Parthians and later Sasanians who occupied the region were master craftsmen, renowned for producing intricate silver and gold objects. Some items from the era show a thin layer of gold deposited onto a base metal like silver, a process that could be achieved through electroplating. A cluster of these so-called Baghdad batteries, connected in series to increase their voltage, could have provided enough current to facilitate this gilding process. Another compelling hypothesis involves medical applications. Ancient Greek and Roman texts describe the use of electric fish to administer therapeutic shocks for pain relief. It is not a great leap to imagine a culture developing a portable, consistent device to generate a similar numbing sensation for minor surgeries or treatments. Of course, there are skeptics who dismiss the battery theory entirely, arguing the jars were simply secure storage containers for sacred scrolls, with the iron rod acting as a spool and the copper cylinder as the protective case. The debate has raged for decades, trapped in a stalemate between archaeological possibility and scientific skepticism. This is precisely where modern electronic testing can cut through the speculation and provide empirical data. The most direct way to resolve the mystery is through a large-scale, meticulously documented replication experiment. Using precise three-dimensional scanning of the original artifacts, researchers could create perfect ceramic copies with historically accurate materials. The crucial next step would be to test these replicas not just with assumed electrolytes like vinegar, but with a full spectrum of substances available to the Parthians: citric acid from lemons, tartaric acid from grapes, and even fermented grape juice. Each combination will be tested with modern multimeters and oscilloscopes to measure the exact voltage and current produced by a single cell. The key data point would be the sustained output over time. A scroll case doesn't need to hold a charge, but a useful battery does. The experiment would then move to a practical application. To test the electroplating theory, a series of, say, 10 replica jars could be connected together to create a battery bank. This array would then be used in an attempt to electroplate a small silver object with gold, using only materials and techniques available in the ancient world. A successful, verifiable deposition of gold onto the object would provide powerful, almost incontrovertible evidence for the battery theory. Similarly, to test the medical hypothesis, the voltage and amperage output could be measured against the known thresholds required to stimulate human nerve endings and create a numbing effect. A neurologist could be consulted to determine if the electrical output is sufficient for pain relief without causing harm. Beyond replication, we could also apply advanced material analysis to the original artifacts themselves. Using a scanning electron microscope, scientists could examine the interior of the copper cylinder and the surface of the iron rod for microscopic traces of electrochemical corrosion. This type of etching is distinct from the patina caused by simple age and exposure. It is a specific signature of a sustained electrochemical reaction. Finding such evidence on the original 2,000-year-old metals would be the smoking gun, proving that these jars did, in fact, hold an acidic liquid and generate a current. This combination of rigorous replication and nanoscale forensic analysis could finally provide a definitive answer, transforming a controversial hypothesis into a confirmed chapter in the history of science. revealing that the spark of invention was struck far earlier and in a far more sophisticated way than we ever imagined. Moving from the potential for ancient electricity, we now journey to the windswept coast of Brittany in northwestern France, where a different kind of power is set in stone. Here, in the village of Karnak, lies one of the most extensive and puzzling megalithic sites on Earth. Over 3,000 prehistoric standing stones arranged in staggering, parallel rows that stretch for miles across the landscape. Erected by a Neolithic culture over 6,000 years ago, these menhirs vary from small, knee-high stones to towering monoliths over 4 meters tall, organized into 3 primary alignments known as Manek, Kermario, and Kerleskan. The sheer scale of the site is overwhelming, a monumental undertaking that would have required generations of coordinated labor, all for a purpose that was lost to time long before written history began. Theories about their function are as numerous as the stones themselves. The most enduring and romantic idea is that they served as a vast astronomical observatory or calendar, their alignments carefully set to mark the rising and setting sun at the solstices and equinoxes, or to track the cycles of the moon. This would have been crucial for an agricultural society, dictating the timing for planting and harvest. Others propose a deeply religious purpose, suggesting the avenues of stones were sacred processional paths used for rituals, perhaps leading to a burial ground or a site of worship. A more somber theory posits that the alignments were territorial markers for different tribes or even represented a defensive structure, a kind of psychic barrier against malevolent spirits or invading groups. For centuries, these ideas have been largely speculative, constrained by the impossibility of seeing the full, grand design from the ground. Modern technology, however, is finally allowing us to step back and view the Karnak alignments with the perspective their creators intended. The first and most transformative tool is the drone-mounted LiDAR survey. While the stones are visible, much of the surrounding landscape is covered in dense vegetation and modern development. LiDAR can penetrate this cover using laser pulses to map the ground surface with incredible precision. This technology can reveal the original, ancient topography, showing how the stones were positioned in relation to hills and valleys that have since been eroded or obscured. More importantly, it can detect the ghosts of stones that have fallen and been buried by centuries of soil, allowing archaeologists to digitally reconstruct the entire site to its original, complete form for the very first time. This comprehensive map is the essential foundation for testing any astronomical theory, as a single missing stone could completely alter the alignment. With a perfect digital model in hand, researchers can then employ sophisticated astronomical software, the same kind used by modern observatories and NASA. This software can calculate the precise positions of the sun, moon, and stars not just for today, but for any date in the past, accounting for subtle changes in the Earth's tilt and orbit over millennia known as precession. Scientists can input the exact coordinates of every single stone into this program and run simulations across decades, even centuries. They can test if the most prominent gaps in the alignments frame the sunrise on the summer solstice, or if a particular cluster of larger stones marks the extreme northern setting point of the moon during a major lunar standstill, an event that occurs only every 18.6 years. This digital experiment can either confirm a celestial purpose or definitively rule it out, moving the debate from patterns seeking to hard data. Yet astronomy may only be part of the story. To understand the ritualistic or funerary aspects, targeted, minimally invasive excavation is key. Using the LiDAR data to identify intriguing anomalies, such as a circular pattern at the end of an alignment suggesting a lost burial mound, archaeologists can use ground-penetrating radar to scan beneath the surface. If GPR indicates a chamber or artifacts, they can then use delicate endoscopic tools to insert a small camera into the ground, or perform a tiny core sample to analyze the soil for chemical traces of decayed organic matter or ceremonial offerings like burned bone or ash. Finding evidence of burial rites at the terminus of these stone avenues would powerfully support the theory that they were sacred pathways for the living to commune with the ancestors, a physical bridge between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. By combining the skyward gaze of astronomical software with the subterranean vision of radar and excavation, we are piecing together a holistic understanding of a site that is not merely a collection of rocks, but a profound Neolithic cathedral built to encompass the heavens above and the earth below. For centuries, the story of the Norse Vikings was one of relentless expansion, of fierce explorers who pushed their longships across the North Atlantic to settle the remote, challenging lands of Iceland and Greenland. Established by the fiery outlaw Eric the Red around 985 AD, the eastern and western settlements in Greenland thrived for nearly 500 years. At their peak, they boasted a population of several thousand, with hundreds of farms, a cathedral, and a steady trade in walrus ivory and furs with Europe. Then, in the 15th century, silence fell, when a ship finally arrived from Iceland around 1520, expecting to find a thriving community. They discovered only abandoned farmsteads, empty churches, and a profound mystery. The entire Norse population had vanished, leaving behind no written record of their fate. What could have caused the complete collapse of a society that had endured for half a millennium? The theories are as harsh as the Arctic environment itself. The traditional explanation points to a climatic villain, the Little Ice Age. This period of global cooling, which began in the 14th century, would have shortened the already brief growing seasons, increased sea ice that blocked crucial trade routes, and made the raising of livestock nearly impossible. A society dependent on pastoral farming would have faced starvation and economic collapse. Others argue that climate was only one factor in a perfect storm of misfortune. Economic change played a role. The value of walrus ivory plummeted in Europe as elephant ivory became more accessible, stripping the Greenland Norse of their primary export. There is also evidence of increasing conflict with the incoming Thule people, the ancestors of the modern Inuit, who are better adapted to the changing climate and may have competed for dwindling resources. Some have even suggested that the Norse, isolated from Europe by ice and shifting trade networks, simply gave up and sailed away to North America, assimilating into other Viking settlements like the one at Elance Orks Meadows. For a long time, these have been educated guesses based on sagas and a scant archaeological record. Now, modern science is allowing us to read the story of their demise in the very ice and soil they left behind. The first key to unlocking this mystery lies in the glaciers. Scientists are using deep ice core samples drilled from the Greenland ice sheet to create a hyper-detailed climate record for the exact centuries the Norse were there. By analyzing the layers of ice, much like reading tree rings, they can measure the thickness of the annual snowfall and, more importantly, the chemical composition of the ice itself. The ratio of oxygen isotopes serves as a precise thermometer, revealing just how cold each summer and winter was. They can also detect volcanic ash layers from known eruptions, which act as time markers, and analyze sea salt concentrations in the ice, which indicate how much storm activity and sea ice there was each year. This data is no longer vague. It can tell us if a specific decade, like the 1340s, was particularly brutal, with a string of cold summers that would have led to crop failure and famine, providing a clear timeline of environmental pressure that correlates with the archaeological evidence of abandonment. On the ground, the story continues with advanced genetic and biochemical analysis of the Norse remains and middens, their ancient garbage heaps. By conducting DNA analysis on the bones of livestock found at the settlement sites, scientists can track their health and diet over time. A sudden shift in the genetics, showing a less diverse and more inbred population of cattle and goats, would be a strong indicator of stressed herds struggling to survive. Even more revealing is a technique called stable isotope analysis. Every time an animal or a person eats or drinks, they incorporate isotopes from their food into their bones and teeth. By testing the Norse skeletons, researchers can determine the ratio of marine to terrestrial food in their diet. A gradual shift over generations from a diet based on farmed beef and dairy to one dominated by seal and fish would be powerful evidence that their agricultural way of life was failing, forcing them to become hunter-gatherers to survive, a desperate adaptation that may have ultimately failed. Finally, from high above, satellite technology offers a way to find settlements we never knew existed, potentially rewriting the narrative of their final days. Thermal infrared imaging satellites can detect subtle differences in the ground's temperature and moisture retention. The buried stone foundations of a longhouse, even one crumbling beneath the turf for 500 years, will retain heat differently than the surrounding soil. By flying these sensors over the entire region of the eastern and western settlements during specific seasonal conditions, archaeologists could potentially locate dozens of lost farms on the very edges of the known settled area. Finding these peripheral settlements could show a pattern of gradual contraction inward as conditions worsened, or it could reveal desperate attempts to colonize new, more favorable fjords right up until the very end. This bird's eye view, combined with the intimate details from ice cores and bones, allows us to move beyond a simple tale of a people who froze to death. We are instead beginning to see a complex societal collapse, a slow-motion tragedy where a proud and resilient people made a series of difficult choices in the face of a changing world, until finally, one harsh winter, the last fire went out and Greenland's Norse chapter quietly closed. While the silence of Greenland's Norse settlers represents a slow societal fade, our next mystery is defined by its terrifying, taunting voice, a voice that spoke in codes and blood and then vanished into the shadows of American history. From the late 1960s to the early 70s, the San Francisco Bay Area was held in the grip of a calculating and sadistic predator known only as the Zodiac Killer. He is confirmed to have murdered at least 5 people, though he claimed a total of 37 in a series of cryptic letters sent to local newspapers. These communications were his signature, a grotesque form of self-promotion that included 4 complex ciphers, detailed diagrams of his bombs, and pieces of blood-stained clothing from his victims as proof of his deeds. He promised to continue killing until his identity was revealed. Yet despite his extensive correspondence and an investigation that spanned decades, he was never caught. His persona became a terrifying legend, a puzzle wrapped in a riddle, and his true name remains one of the most infuriating open cases in American criminal history. The investigation was flooded with suspects, but one name has persistently risen to the top: Arthur Lee Allen. A former schoolteacher with a disturbing criminal history involving child molestation, Allen was first brought to the attention of police in 1971. He was investigated multiple times over the years. He owned a watch branded with the Zodiac's crosshair symbol. He was in the vicinity of several attacks on the correct dates, and he was even named as the prime suspect by a close friend. Most chillingly, when questioned in 1991, he responded to a direct question about being the Zodiac with a smirk and the phrase, "I am not the Zodiac. And if I were, I wouldn't tell you." He died in 1992 without ever being charged, leaving behind a cloud of damning circumstantial evidence but no definitive proof. Other suspects have ranged from a man whose DNA initially cleared him to various individuals whose handwriting or personal quirks seem to match the killer's profile, but the case has remained stubbornly cold. The problem has always been one of evidence degradation and the limitations of pre-digital forensics. Here, modern genetic science offers a path forward that was unimaginable 50 years ago. The key evidence lies in the Zodiac's own letters. He licked the envelopes and stamps he used to mail his taunts, potentially leaving behind a treasure trove of epithelial cells containing his DNA. Early attempts at DNA extraction in the 2000s were hampered by the technology of the time. The samples were small, degraded, and easily contaminated. Today, forensic science has undergone a revolution with the advent of next-generation sequencing. This technique can analyze Chinese letter heavily degraded DNA samples that were once considered useless. Scientists can now use a process called whole genome amplification to create millions of copies of the damaged DNA from a single stamp, providing a robust enough sample for a full genetic profile. This profile could then be uploaded to public genetic genealogy databases like GEDmatch. This is the same technique that led to the identification of the Golden State Killer in 2018. Investigators would use the Zodiac's DNA to find distant relatives in these databases, then employ traditional genealogical research to build out a massive family tree. By working backward through time to find a common ancestor and then forward to identify all male descendants who were of the right age and lived in Northern California in the late 1960s, they could generate a new, scientifically supported list of suspects. This process could either confirm long-held suspicions about someone like Arthur Lee Allen by definitively excluding him, or it could point to a completely unexpected individual, a name that has never been seriously considered, finally giving a true identity to the shadow that called itself Zodiac. Simultaneously, the very thing that made the Zodiac famous, his ciphers, could also be his undoing through modern computing power. Of his 4 known ciphers, 2 remain unsolved, the so-called Z13 and Z32 codes, which are only 13 and 32 characters long, respectively. These are far too short for human cryptographers to crack using frequency analysis, as there simply isn't enough text to establish a pattern. This is where artificial intelligence and brute force computing can succeed where humans have failed. Researchers could train a machine learning algorithm on the Zodiac's 2 solved ciphers, the Z408 and the Z340, teaching the AI the killer's unique stylistic patterns, his spelling errors, his symbolic substitutions, and his linguistic quirks. This trained AI could then be set upon the unsolved ciphers. Unlike a human, a computer can test trillions of possible combinations per second, not just for simple letter substitution, but for complex homophonic ciphers where multiple symbols can represent the same letter. It can test for keywords the Zodiac was known to use, like paradise and slaves, and it can cross-reference its output against the entire corpus of his written communications to see if the resulting plaintext matches his known voice and vocabulary. The real power of AI here is its lack of preconception. It doesn't get stuck on a single theory or suspect. It simply runs through every possible permutation, and if there is a solution to be found within those 13 characters, the algorithm will find it. These 2 technological paths, one tracing biology through genetic genealogy, the other deconstructing intellect through artificial code breaking, converge on the same goal. One provides a name, the other could provide a confession hidden in plain sight for over half a century, finally silencing the Zodiac's taunting voice with the unequivocal truth of science. Isolated in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, presents one of archaeology's most iconic and physically imposing puzzles, the nearly 1,000 massive stone statues known as moai. These monolithic human figures, with their heavy brows and elongated features, average 13 feet tall and weigh a staggering 14 tons each. The largest among them, named El Gigante, lies unfinished in the quarry and is a breathtaking 70 feet long, estimated to weigh over 80 tons. The island's volcanic quarry at Roanoke is littered with these giants in various states of completion, some still attached to the bedrock. But the truly mind-bending part of the mystery is found miles away on stone platforms called ahu that dot the coastline. How did a people with no access to wheels, metal tools, or large animals move these colossal stones across miles of rugged, hilly terrain? This question has perplexed explorers and scientists for centuries, giving rise to theories that range from the ingenious to the outright extraterrestrial. The most enduring explanation taught in schools for generations is the log rolling method. This theory posits that the Rapa Nui people felled the island's once lush palm forests to create an army of rollers. The moai would be laid on its back on a sled or frame, and teams of workers would use ropes to pull it forward while others constantly repositioned logs from the back to the front, creating a continuous rolling path. While this seems mechanically plausible on flat ground, the theory begins to unravel when applied to Easter Island's actual topography. The island is not a flat plain. It is a landscape of steep, rocky inclines and sudden valleys. Controlling an 80-ton stone on a downward slope using only manpower and logs would be a terrifyingly dangerous endeavor, likely resulting in catastrophic runaway accidents. Furthermore, this method would have required an enormous consumption of the island's precious timber, a resource that evidence shows was already becoming scarce, potentially contributing to the society's eventual collapse. The ecological cost alone makes this theory increasingly problematic. A more recent and captivating hypothesis turns the log rolling idea on its head. Instead of lying the statue down, what if the Rapa Nui walked them? This walking theory was dramatically demonstrated by archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo. Their experiment involved a team of just 18 people, 3 strong ropes, and a precise, rhythmic technique. One team pulled forward on a lead rope attached to the statue's head, while 2 other teams on ropes attached to the base and rear worked to rock the moai from side to side. With each coordinated rocking motion, the teams could walk a concrete replica a few hundred meters with relative control. This method seems to elegantly solve the problems of the log rolling theory, requiring far fewer people and no timber at all. However, critics point out that the replica used was much smaller than the average moai, and the experiment was conducted on flat, open ground. The real test would be navigating the island's harsh slopes and uneven terrain with a full-sized, multi-ton statue without it snapping at the slender neck. This is precisely where modern technology can move beyond small-scale demonstrations and settle the debate with empirical evidence. The first step would be to create a perfect digital twin of the island's landscape using high-resolution LiDAR mapping. This data would provide a millimeter-accurate, 3-dimensional model of the exact routes the statues likely took from the quarry to various ahu. Researchers could then input this terrain data into advanced physics simulation software. Next, they would use 3D laser scanning to create hyper-accurate digital models of actual moai, capturing their exact center of gravity, weight distribution, and fragile points. By plugging these precise statues into the precise landscape within the simulation, engineers could run thousands of virtual tests for each transportation method. The software could calculate the exact forces, stresses, and points of failure for a giant moai being walked down a 15-degree slope or pulled on logs across a rocky field. This digital sandbox would reveal, with mathematical certainty, which method is physically feasible and which would have resulted in broken statues littering the ancient pathways. But the virtual world needs to be grounded in physical reality. This is where large-scale 3D printing enters the picture. Using the laser scan data, researchers could print a full-scale, hollow replica of a mid-sized moai out of a composite material that accurately mimics the density and structural properties of the volcanic tuff from which the real statues were carved. This replica would be far cheaper and ethically preferable to using an actual ancient monument for experimentation. With this perfect physical copy, teams could then attempt to transport it using both the walking and log rolling methods on actual representative sections of Easter Island terrain, all while it is instrumented with a myriad of sensors. Strain gauges would measure the stress on the statue's neck and base, while pressure pads on the ropes would show exactly how much force is required from the pullers. High-speed motion capture cameras would track every minute movement, providing a treasure trove of data on the dynamics of each technique. Finally, soil mechanics testing could provide a crucial missing piece of the puzzle. Archaeologists could use ground-penetrating radar to scan the ancient roads, searching for evidence of prepared tracks. Were the paths deliberately hardened or leveled? Did the Rapa Nui create a slick surface of mashed sweet potatoes to act as a lubricant, as some oral traditions suggest? By taking core samples along these roads, scientists could analyze the soil compaction at different depths. A heavily compacted pathway would suggest consistent heavy use, perhaps from countless statues being dragged along the same route, supporting the log rolling theory. Alternatively, the absence of such compaction might support the walking theory, which would exert a different, more vertical pressure on the ground. This multi-pronged approach, combining digital simulation, physical replication with sensor technology, and forensic soil analysis, would finally allow us to move beyond speculation. We could know with a high degree of confidence the exact methods used by the Rapa Nui to achieve their astonishing feat, not by diminishing their ingenuity, but by truly appreciating the sophisticated engineering and profound cooperation it demanded. On a small, wooded island off the coast of Nova Scotia lies a hole in the ground that has consumed fortunes, dreams, and lives for over 2 centuries. The legend of the Oak Island Money Pit begins in 1795, when a teenager named Daniel Maginnis discovered a peculiar circular depression in the earth with an old ship's pulley hanging from a tree limb above it. Certain he had found a pirate's stash, he returned with friends and began to dig. What they uncovered was not a simple treasure chest, but an elaborate, deeply sinister mechanism. Just a few feet down, they hit a layer of flagstones not native to the island. 10 feet deeper, they found a platform of sturdy oak logs. At 20, 30, and 40 feet, they found the same thing, a new oak platform at each 10-foot interval. It was clear this was no simple burial. It was a massive, meticulously engineered project designed to protect something of immense value. And then the traps began. The true genius or malice of the money pit's design became apparent as subsequent excavators reached deeper. At around 90 feet, a searcher's crowbar struck something solid, likely a large stone slab. Inscribed on this 90-foot stone were cryptic symbols that were later translated to read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. Yet when they attempted to dig further, the shaft suddenly flooded with seawater, a disaster that would repeat itself time and again, foiling every attempt to reach the bottom. Later excavations revealed that the builders had constructed an ingenious series of flood tunnels, cleverly linked to the ocean through a natural sponge like bedrock and artificial channels. These tunnels were designed to trigger a catastrophic inundation the moment the treasure chamber was breached, ensuring that whatever was hidden there would remain forever protected by the sea itself. This has led to the central, tantalizing question: what could possibly be so valuable as to warrant such an extraordinary and ruthless defense system? The theories are as vast as the sums of money spent trying to prove them. The most romantic idea points to Captain William Kidd, or the pirate Blackbeard, who supposedly once claimed he would bury his treasure where none but Satan and myself can find it. Another compelling theory suggests it is the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, perhaps even the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, smuggled out of Europe and hidden in the New World. Some propose it is the missing royal jewels of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, or the original works of Shakespeare penned by Sir Francis Bacon. For over 200 years, these stories have fueled an obsession that has cost millions of dollars and claimed at least 6 lives, turning the search into a multi-generational quest that is as much about the thrill of the hunt as it is about the potential prize. The fundamental divide is between those who see a complex historical construction and those who believe it is merely a natural sinkhole, its regular layers formed by geological chance and its flooding the result of a coincidental link to the sea. This is where 21st century remote sensing technology can finally cut through 2 centuries of speculation and provide a definitive map of what lies below. The entire area could be subjected to a comprehensive ground-penetrating radar or GPR survey. Unlike the narrow shafts dug by treasure hunters, GPR can scan a wide area from the surface, sending electromagnetic pulses into the ground and building a detailed 3-dimensional map of subsurface anomalies. A systematic grid survey could reveal the full extent of the original construction, showing the precise layout of the alleged flood tunnels, identifying whether they are man-made conduits or simply natural fissures in the bedrock, and pinpointing the location of any large, buried metal objects like chests or tools without a single shovel breaking earth. For the notorious swamp on the island, which some believe hides the original entrance to the flood tunnels or even a sunken Spanish galleon, researchers could deploy submersible drones equipped with penetrating sonar. These autonomous underwater vehicles could map the murky, peat-filled water and the sludge beneath it, searching for the outline of a ship's hull or the stonework of a constructed tunnel entrance. Their sonar could distinguish between a random pile of rocks and a deliberately laid wall, providing undeniable evidence of human engineering in an area that has resisted conventional excavation. Perhaps the most conclusive test would involve carbon dating any wooden structures that have been recovered from the pit over the years. While many artifacts have been lost, including the infamous 90-foot stone, modern searchers continue to find wooden remnants. If a newly recovered piece of oak planking or a coconut fiber, a material not native to Canada found in the flood tunnels, could be subjected to accelerated mass spectrometry dating, it would provide an irrefutable timestamp. A date in the 17th century would strongly support the pirate theory, while a medieval date would send shockwaves through the archaeological world, potentially validating the Knights Templar hypothesis. A modern date, however, would suggest an elaborate hoax. By combining the wide area reconnaissance of GPR, the underwater exploration of drones, and the chronological certainty of carbon dating, we can finally resolve the Oak Island mystery not through backbreaking digging, but through the power of non-invasive science, determining once and for all if this intricate puzzle is a testament to brilliant historical engineers or the most captivating geological accident in history. Leaving behind the complex engineering of Oak Island, we now turn to a historical event that defies all rational explanation, a true medical mystery where the human body became a prison of uncontrollable motion. In the hot July of 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, a woman named Frau Trophia stepped into the street and began to dance. This was not a dance of joy or celebration. It was a frantic, compulsive, and ceaseless jig. She danced for days, her feet bleeding, her body exhausted, utterly unable to stop. Within a week, dozens of others had joined her. Within a month, the frantic, swirling crowd had swelled to over 400 people, all caught in the same terrifying, involuntary convulsion of dance. Authorities, desperate to end what became known as the dancing plague, did the only thing they could think of. They cleared guild halls, built a massive stage, and hired musicians and professional dancers to encourage the afflicted to dance it out, believing this would break the fever. This bizarre strategy, of course, failed spectacularly. The dancing continued for weeks, and by the time the epidemic finally subsided, dozens had died from sheer exhaustion, heart attacks, or strokes. The question that has haunted historians and physicians for 5 centuries is simple yet profound. What on earth caused this to happen? The theories proposed to explain this bizarre event fall into 2 main camps, the biological and the psychological. The most enduring biological explanation is ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on damp rye, a staple grain in 16th century Europe. This fungus contains alkaloids that are chemically similar to LSD, a powerful hallucinogen. If the Strasbourg population had consumed bread made from ergot-infected rye, It could have induced convulsions, spasms, and terrifying hallucinations that might have manifested as this frantic, desperate dancing. The symptoms of ergotism, also known as St. Anthony's fire, include muscle twitching and spasms, along with a burning sensation in the limbs, which could have been misinterpreted as an urge to move uncontrollably. However, classic ergotism also leads to gangrene and the constriction of blood flow to the extremities, symptoms that were not widely reported in the contemporary accounts of the Strasbourg event, which focused almost entirely on the dancing itself. The competing, and perhaps more widely accepted, theory is that of mass psychogenic illness or mass hysteria. This is a phenomenon where psychological distress is converted into physical symptoms within a group. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city under immense psychological pressure. The region had suffered a series of devastating famines, the political climate was unstable, and a wave of superstitious fear had been sweeping through the populace, fueled by popular preaching that warned of a curse from a saint named Vitus for those who did not appease him. In this climate of extreme fear, starvation, and religious fervor, the sight of one person dancing erratically could have acted as a powerful trigger. The psychological distress of the community found a physical outlet, spreading through a process of social contagion where the suggestion of illness, witnessed by others, manifests as real physical symptoms. This was not a conscious act but a shared psychological break, a desperate somatic cry from a traumatized community. Modern science offers us a way to move beyond this theoretical stalemate and finally diagnose this 500-year-old epidemic. The first approach would be a direct toxicological analysis. While we cannot test the bread from 1518, we can analyze the remains of the victims. The key would be to locate a burial site associated with the dancing plague victims. If any of the deceased were interred in a lead-lined coffin or in an anaerobic environment like a peat bog, their remains and any soft tissues could be exceptionally well preserved. Using the most sensitive techniques in modern forensic toxicology, such as liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, scientists could test samples of bone, hair, or even preserved skin for the presence of ergot alkaloids. Hair analysis is particularly promising as it can provide a timeline of exposure. If these alkaloids were present in the victims' systems in the weeks leading up to their deaths, it would be powerful, direct evidence supporting the ergot poisoning theory and potentially closing the case for good. If toxicology draws a blank, the focus would shift to the mind. Here, sophisticated computer modeling could provide unprecedented insight. Researchers could build a detailed digital reconstruction of 16th-century Strasbourg, incorporating historical data on population density, social networks, family structures, and the specific timeline of the plague's spread. They could then program an agent-based model where each agent or digital citizen is assigned variables based on historical records, their level of malnutrition, their psychological stress, their religious fervor, and their susceptibility to suggestion. By running this simulation, scientists could observe how a hysterical behavior might propagate through a stressed population. Would the model show the dancing spreading rapidly through key social hubs like churches or markets? Would it burn out quickly, or would it sustain itself for weeks, matching the historical account? This kind of digital epidemiology could test the mass hysteria theory with a rigor never before possible, showing us not just if it could happen, but precisely how it likely did happen, providing a terrifying window into the power of the human psyche under extreme duress. Whether the cause was a toxic fungus or a contagious fear, solving the mystery of the dancing plague does more than satisfy historical curiosity. It helps us understand the profound and sometimes frightening interconnection between our environment, our bodies, and our mind. Emerging from the cold, dark waters of northern Europe's peat bogs, the ancient dead return to us with secrets etched upon their skin. These are the bog bodies, and their state of preservation is nothing short of miraculous. The same sphagnum moss and acidic, oxygen-poor environment that turns peat into fuel has tanned their skin to leather, preserved their facial features, and even kept the styling of their hair intact for over 2,000 years. But this incredible preservation comes with a horrifying counterpoint: the manner of their deaths. These are not peaceful burials. The bodies show clear evidence of brutal, ritualized violence: throat slits, garrotes, crushed skulls, and stab wounds. They were not laid to rest, they were offered up. The central mystery is not just who they were, but why they were chosen for such a grim fate. Were they criminals, prisoners of war, or willing sacrifices offered to the gods to ensure a good harvest or victory in battle? Modern forensic science is finally giving these silent victims a voice, allowing us to investigate their murders and understand their world. The investigation begins the moment a body is discovered. The first and most crucial tool is the whole-body computed tomography, or CT, scan. This non-invasive technology allows archaeologists to conduct a full virtual autopsy without ever making an incision, preserving the fragile remains perfectly. The CT scanner creates a three-dimensional digital model of the entire body, layer by layer. This allows forensic pathologists to examine injuries in minute detail, distinguishing between perimortem trauma that occurred at the time of death and post-mortem damage caused by the bog's pressure or modern peat-cutting machinery. They can analyze a fractured hyoid bone in the neck to confirm death by strangulation, or study the precise angle of a stab wound to determine the assailant's height and handedness. For the famous Lindo man found in England, CT scans revealed a vicious blow to the top of his head, a garrote around his neck, and a cut to his throat. A triple killing method that suggests an elaborate ritual execution rather than a simple murder. This technology turns a 2,000-year-old cold case into an active forensic investigation, providing a clear cause of death and a window into the final, violent moments of these individuals. But knowing how they died is only the first step. The real goal is to understand who they were and where they came from. This is where biogeochemical analysis becomes our most powerful tool. Stable isotope analysis involves studying the chemical signatures locked within a person's bones, teeth, and hair. The key principle is you are what you eat and drink, and the isotopes from your local environment become incorporated into your body's tissues. By analyzing the strontium and oxygen isotopes in the enamel of their teeth, which form in childhood and remain unchanged, scientists can pinpoint the geological region where an individual grew up. A bog body found in Denmark might have isotope ratios matching the geology of southern Europe, revealing them to be a long-distance traveler or perhaps a captive taken from a faraway land. Furthermore, analyzing the nitrogen and carbon isotopes in their bones and hair tells a detailed story of their diet. A diet rich in marine proteins from fish and shellfish produces a different isotopic signature than a diet based on terrestrial plants and meat. For the Toland man, another famous bog body, isotope analysis revealed his last meal was a simple, gruel-like porridge made of barley and flax, eaten 12 to 24 hours before his death. This was not a festive last meal, but a common, perhaps even impoverished fare. This kind of data helps us reconstruct their social status. Was the individual a high-status person who ate meat regularly, or a commoner whose diet was heavily reliant on grains? By combining the geographic data from their teeth with the dietary data from their bones, we can begin to build a biography, where they spent their early years, what their social standing was, and whether they were a local or a stranger to the land where they met their end. The final and perhaps most moving step is to look these ancient people in the eye through the power of forensic facial reconstruction. Using the high-resolution data from the CT scans, specialists can create a precise three-dimensional model of the skull. This digital skull then serves as the anatomical foundation for rebuilding the face. Using software that understands the precise relationship between bone structure and soft tissue, artists can digitally sculpt the muscles layer by layer based on known anatomical standards. The thickness of the tissue at key points on the skull is determined by ethnic and gender averages, providing a scientifically grounded roadmap for the face's form. This is not guesswork, it is a meticulous scientific process that results in a recognizable human face. The finished reconstruction gives us a profound connection to the past, transforming a skeletal remain into a person with a distinct appearance. When we look upon the reconstructed face of the Id girl from the Netherlands, a teenager with a crooked spine who was likely strangled with her own woolen band, we are no longer staring at a museum artifact. We are confronting a young girl from the Iron Age, her expression frozen in time. This combination of virtual autopsies, isotopic life stories, and facial rebuilding does more than solve a mystery. It restores humanity to these individuals, allowing us to understand their sacrifice not as a primitive superstition, but as a deeply ingrained and to them utterly necessary part of their worldview and their relationship with the gods. While the bog bodies offer a silent testament to ancient rituals, our next mystery speaks in tantalizing lists and precise measurements of unimaginable wealth, yet remains frustratingly out of reach. Discovered in 1952 among the other Dead Sea Scrolls in Cave 3 near Qumran, the Copper Scroll stands utterly apart. Unlike its companions, which are delicate parchments inscribed with religious texts, this document is made of thin, oxidized copper. And its message is not spiritual, it is a stark, practical inventory. Written in a form of Hebrew distinct from the other scrolls, it describes 64 different caches of treasure hidden throughout the Judean desert. The sums are staggering, listing over 4,600 talents of gold and silver, along with vast quantities of precious incense, artifacts, and even a second set of scrolls. If even partially accurate, the treasure it describes would be worth billions of dollars today. But for over 70 years, this incredible bounty has remained hidden, its descriptions too vague and its locations too cryptic for modern searchers to decipher. The scroll itself presents the first layer of the puzzle. The language is terse and practical, reading less like a map and more like a warehouse ledger. It gives instructions like, in the ruin that is in the valley, dig down 7 cubits, there is a chest of silver. The challenge is that the landmarks referenced, a black stone, a ruin, a pool, were likely common features 2,000 years ago, but have been lost to erosion, earthquakes, and centuries of settlement. Furthermore, the measurements are in ancient units like cubits and talents, whose exact modern equivalents are still debated by scholars. This has led to a fundamental divide in interpretation. Some believe the scroll is a genuine record of the vast wealth of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, hidden away to protect it from the invading Romans around 70 AD. Others argue it is a work of fiction, a folk tale, or a religious allegory about the end times, never meant to be taken literally. A few even suggest it was a clever diversion, designed to send treasure hunters on a wild goose chase while the real treasure was secreted elsewhere. The only way to move beyond this debate is to find physical evidence, and that requires seeing the landscape with new eyes. This is where advanced multispectral imaging could provide the key breakthrough. The arid environment of the Judean desert, while harsh, is a perfect canvas for this technology. Over centuries, the ground settles differently over buried structures or excavated pits. This creates subtle variations in soil moisture and density that are invisible to the naked eye, but can be detected by sensors capturing specific light wavelengths. A comprehensive aerial survey using drones equipped with multispectral and thermal cameras could fly a precise grid pattern over the entire region described in the scroll. By analyzing the data, researchers could identify dozens of subtle anomalies, patches of Earth that retain heat differently or support unique vegetation due to disturbed soil underneath. A circular patch of slightly lusher grass in an otherwise barren valley could mark the filled-in shaft of an ancient treasure pit, its contents long gone but its ghostly imprint still etched into the Earth's chemistry. To complement this bird's-eye view, a focused geological and LiDAR analysis of the Qumran Plateau itself could be revolutionary. The community that produced the Dead Sea Scrolls is believed to have been the Essenes, a devout Jewish sect. It is plausible they would have hidden their own most valuable possessions nearby. Using ground-penetrating radar and electromagnetic induction sensors, archaeologists could conduct a high-resolution subsurface survey of the entire Qumran site. These tools can distinguish between solid bedrock and voids or metallic disturbances several meters underground. A strong, localized metallic signature detected beneath a ruined courtyard or an abandoned cistern would be an irresistible target for excavation. It could indicate a hidden hoard of silver coins or gold artifacts, exactly the kind of treasure the Copper Scroll describes. Perhaps the most elegant solution lies in cross-referencing the scroll's cryptic directions with our new understanding of the ancient environment. Paleohydrologists can study the region to reconstruct what the water sources looked like 2 millennia ago. The pool mentioned in one location might now be a completely dry riverbed, its course shifted by an ancient earthquake. By using satellite data and core samples to map these ancient hydrological features, researchers can create a digital overlay of the past landscape. They could then plot the scroll's directions onto this historical map, transforming vague references into specific, testable geographic coordinates. This multidisciplinary approach, using environmental science to rebuild the past, remote sensing to scan its surface, and geology to probe its depths, represents our best chance to finally solve the Copper Scroll's riddle. It would allow us to separate geological fact from folkloric fiction, either leading to one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history, or finally allowing us to close the book on a legend that has captivated treasure hunters for generations. For decades, the residents of the small, artistic community of Taos, New Mexico, have reported a relentless and deeply unsettling phenomenon, a persistent, low-frequency humming noise that seems to have no discernible source. This is not a sound everyone can hear, but for those who can, known as hearers, it is a life-altering intrusion. They describe it as a distant diesel engine idling, a steady, vibrating rumble that is most audible indoors and at night when the world is quiet. It's a sound that penetrates walls and earplugs, leading to chronic sleep deprivation, anxiety, headaches, and for some, an inability to continue living in their own homes. Despite numerous official investigations, including one commissioned by the U.S. Congress in the 1990s, the origin of the Taos hum has remained one of acoustics' most frustrating puzzles, a ghost in the auditory machine of the modern world. The theories proposed to explain the hum are as varied as they are contentious, often pitting hearers against skeptics. The most straightforward explanations point to mundane industrial sources. Perhaps it's the aggregate of many distant sources, like the electrical grid's 60 Hz hum, compressors at natural gas facilities, or even low-frequency noise from highways carried for miles by specific atmospheric conditions. On the more exotic end of the spectrum, some have proposed geological causes, such as the amplification of microseisms, tiny, constant vibrations of the Earth caused by ocean waves pounding on distant coastlines, or even the movement of tectonic plates deep below the surface. Then there are the more speculative ideas, from secret military communications using extremely low-frequency radio waves to a unique form of tinnitus, a physiological condition where the brain generates sound in the absence of an external stimulus. The challenge has always been the subjective and elusive nature of the hum itself. It comes and goes, is heard by only a fraction of the population, and has defied all attempts to be recorded reliably by standard microphones. This is where 21st century sensing and data analysis technology can finally cut through the anecdote and find the signal in the noise. The first and most crucial step is to deploy a sophisticated network of sensors designed to capture the entire spectrum of sound and vibration, not just what is audible to the human ear. An array of ultra-sensitive infrasound microphones would be strategically placed across the Taos area, from the mesa tops to deep within residential basements. Unlike standard microphones, these are calibrated to detect pressure waves far below the 20 Hz threshold of human hearing in the infrasound range. This is critical as the hum is often described as a felt sensation as much as a heard one, a classic characteristic of infrasound. Simultaneously, a network of seismometers would be deployed to measure the slightest ground vibrations, and electromagnetic field detectors would scan for anomalies in the local EM environment. This multi-pronged sensor array would operate continuously, building a massive multimodal dataset that captures the town's entire physical signature around the clock for an extended period. The real magic, however, happens not in the collection but in the analysis. The terabytes of raw data from these sensors would be processed using powerful machine learning algorithms. The first task for the AI would be to filter out all known and constant noises, the predictable rhythms of the power grid, scheduled industrial activity, and regular traffic patterns. Once the background is digitally subtracted, the algorithm would be trained to hunt for a persistent, anomalous signal that correlates strongly with the times and locations where human hearers report the hum most intensely. The AI wouldn't be looking for a simple sound. It would be looking for a complex fingerprint, a specific combination of a low-frequency acoustic wave, a particular pattern of ground vibration, and perhaps even a localized electromagnetic fluctuation that together create the unique perceptual experience reported by hearers. This data-driven approach could finally resolve the physiological versus external debate. If the algorithms consistently identify a clear external physical signal that aligns perfectly with hum reports, it would provide undeniable proof of an objective source. Conversely, if the sensor network detects absolutely nothing unusual during episodes when multiple hearers insist the hum is intense, it would provide powerful evidence for a neurological or psychological origin, perhaps a heightened sensitivity to a very common low-frequency sound that most people's brains naturally filter out. By applying the cold, objective lens of big data and artificial intelligence to this deeply subjective experience, we can finally move beyond decades of frustration and argument, offering the people of Taos something they have sought for generations, a definitive answer, and with it perhaps the peace and quiet they deserve. Amidst the countless hours of static and cosmic noise that fills the radio spectrum, one singular event stands out as perhaps the most compelling hello we have ever received from the cosmos. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear Radio Telescope at Ohio State University was performing its usual silent vigil, scanning the sky for any signal that stood out from the natural background hum of the universe. That night, volunteer astronomer Jerry Amon was reviewing the computer printouts, a long scroll of alphanumeric data representing signal intensity, when his eye caught something that made him catch his breath. There, in the data from a narrowband frequency near the hydrogen line, a frequency scientists had theorized might be used for interstellar communication, was a signal so powerful that it maxed out the equipment scale. It lasted for a full 72 seconds, the exact duration the telescope could focus on a fixed point in the sky, and then it was gone. Amon circled the alphanumeric sequence on the printout, and in a moment of stunned disbelief, simply wrote, "Wow." In the margin, that single word gave the signal its name, and it has captivated astronomers and the public imagination ever since. The characteristics of the wow signal are what make it so tantalizingly anomalous. It was a very narrowband signal, meaning it was concentrated on one specific frequency, which is a hallmark of an artificial transmitter. Natural cosmic objects like pulsars or quasars broadcast their energy across a wide range of frequencies. It also followed a pattern of rising and then falling intensity that perfectly matched the expected bell curve as the Big Ear Telescope's twin horns focused on, then moved away from, a fixed point in the constellation Sagittarius. This proved the signal was coming from a specific pinpoint location in space, not a widespread source. Despite numerous attempts to find it again over the decades, using increasingly powerful telescopes, the WOW signal has never repeated. This single brilliant shout into the void has been followed by a silence that is now over 45 years long. The central question remains, was it a one-time astronomical phenomenon we don't yet understand, an errant transmission from a human satellite that was never identified? Or was it exactly what it looked like, a momentary blip of an interstellar beacon, a cosmic flare that lasted just long enough to let us know we are not alone? This is where our modern technological arsenal offers a chance to break that silence. The search for a repeat signal, or for others like it, has been revolutionized by facilities like the SETI Institute's Allen Telescope Array, or ATIA. Unlike the single-dish Big Ear telescope, the ATIA is a coordinated array of 42 individual radio dishes working together. This allows it to scan vast areas of the sky simultaneously and monitor thousands of star systems at once, all while analyzing billions of different radio channels. Its very design is built for patience and persistence, two things essential for finding a signal that has only ever appeared once. If the WOW signal was a deliberate broadcast, the ATIA is far more likely to catch it again should it be repeated. Furthermore, its sensitivity is so great that it could detect a signal with only a fraction of the power of the original WOW transmission, potentially hearing whispers that the older technology would have missed completely. Perhaps even more transformative is the role of artificial intelligence. The fundamental challenge of modern SETI is no longer a lack of data, but an overwhelming surplus of it. Our radio telescopes now collect petabytes of information, a cosmic haystack of unimaginable size. Sifting through this manually for a single needle is an impossible task. This is where machine learning algorithms come in. AI can be trained to recognize the unique fingerprint of a signal like WOW, and then unleashed to perpetually scan incoming data in real time, flagging any anomalies that match its profile with a speed and accuracy no human team could ever match. These systems don't get tired, they don't have biases, and they are never tempted to dismiss a faint signal as mere static. Beyond just listening for a repeat, modern science also offers ways to definitively rule out natural causes. One persistent theory has been that the WOW signal was caused by a comet. Hydrogen clouds around these icy bodies can emit radio waves. However, researchers have since checked the location of the signal against known comet positions from 1977 and found no matches, effectively ruling out that explanation. Today, we can go much further. By combining radio astronomy data with observations from optical, infrared, and X-ray telescopes, we can build a complete multi-wavelength portrait of that precise patch of sky. If a mysterious radio burst like WOW were detected today, we could immediately cross-reference it to see if there was a corresponding flare in another part of the spectrum, a star going through a violent outburst, a black hole consuming matter, or some other cataclysmic event. The absence of any such corroborating natural event would make the case for an artificial origin stronger than ever. The mystery of the WOW signal endures not as a failure of science, but as its ultimate motivator, a reminder that the universe is vast and full of surprises, and that our tools for listening to its secrets are finally becoming equal to the task. Far to the west of the Bermuda Triangle, in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, lies another region of nautical dread and legend. Off the eastern coast of Japan, surrounding the volcanic Izu Islands, is an area the Japanese have dubbed the Mano Yumi, or the Devil's Sea. For centuries, this patch of water has been feared by fishermen and sailors, a place where ships are said to vanish without a trace, swallowed by sudden, violent storms or pulled into the depths by unseen forces. Like its Atlantic counterpart, the Devil's Sea has been a fertile ground for speculative theories, from malevolent sea monsters and alien abductions to the existence of a mysterious, destructive energy vortex. The disappearance of multiple military and research vessels in the 1950s, including the infamous loss of the Kayo Maru no. 5, a government-funded research ship sent to investigate the phenomena, only cemented its terrifying reputation. For decades, the mystery was fueled by a lack of data, leaving room for imagination to fill the void. But today, we are no longer sailing blind into this legend. We are deploying a fleet of technological instruments to finally separate maritime myth from oceanographic fact. The most compelling and scientifically grounded explanation for the Devil's Sea's dangers lies not in the realm of the paranormal, but in the powerful and volatile geology of the region. This area is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most seismically active zones on the planet. The seafloor here is a dynamic and chaotic landscape of deep trenches, active underwater volcanoes, and shifting tectonic plates. This geological drama creates a perfect storm of natural hazards that can easily account for the loss of ships. The key to understanding these events may be a phenomenon known as methane hydrate eruptions. Deep beneath the seabed, under immense pressure and cold temperatures, vast deposits of methane gas are trapped in a crystalline ice-like form. When a submarine earthquake or landslide occurs, a frequent event in this unstable region, these solid hydrates can suddenly destabilize, transforming explosively from solid to gas. This rapid phase change can create a massive, swirling column of bubbles that drastically reduces the density of the water directly above it. A ship caught in such a plume would lose its buoyancy instantly, plunging beneath the waves in a matter of seconds without even having time to send a distress call. This theory elegantly explains the sudden, silent disappearances that have fueled the legend for generations. Proving this theory requires a deep dive into this hostile environment, and modern oceanographic technology is making that possible. The first line of investigation involves deploying a network of advanced seafloor sensors around the Izu Islands. These aren't simple instruments, they are sophisticated nodes in a comprehensive monitoring array. They include highly sensitive hydrophones to detect the low-frequency rumble of methane eruptions, bottom pressure recorders to measure the sudden changes in water density caused by bubbling plumes, and seismometers to correlate any events with the constant tremors that shake the region. By placing these sensors at strategic points across the Devil's Sea, scientists can begin to gather real-time data on these elusive and destructive events. The goal is to catch an eruption in the act, to record the before, during, and after of a hydrate release and directly link it to a specific seismic trigger. This data would transform a compelling hypothesis into a documented, repeatable geological process. Complementing this underwater network is the watchful eye of satellite monitoring. Satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar can scan the ocean's surface through cloud cover and darkness, detecting minute changes in surface roughness and water texture. A large-scale methane plume erupting from the depths would create a distinct, chaotic patch on the ocean's surface that would stand out against the surrounding water on a radar image. By analyzing historical satellite data, researchers could potentially scour the archives for these telltale signatures, looking for evidence of past eruptions that coincided with known disappearances. Furthermore, infrared sensors on these satellites can detect sudden, localized changes in sea surface temperature. An upwelling of gas from the cold depths could bring colder water to the surface, creating a temporary cold spot that marks the location of an eruption event. This satellite perspective provides the wide area surveillance needed to understand the frequency and scale of these phenomena across the entire Devil's Sea. Finally, to complete the picture, autonomous underwater vehicles are being sent into the depths to map the seafloor with unprecedented clarity. AUVs equipped with multi-beam sonar and sub-bottom profilers are charting the underwater terrain of the Devil's Sea, creating high-resolution three-dimensional maps that reveal the hidden architecture of this dangerous region. These maps can pinpoint the exact locations of methane hydrate deposits, identify the fault lines and slopes most susceptible to landslides, and even find the wrecks of lost ships, silently testifying to the power of the forces that put them there. By combining the real-time data from the sensor networks, the historical evidence from satellite archives, and the detailed bathymetric maps from the AUVs, we are building a comprehensive digital model of the Devil's Sea. This model allows us to not only explain past tragedies but also to predict future hazards, transforming a feared zone of superstition into an understood, if still respectably dangerous, part of our dynamic planet. The mystery of the Devil's Sea is not being erased by science, it is being deepened, revealing a reality far more dramatic and powerful than any simple myth. Far to the north of Rome, in the misty, unconquered lands of Britannia, lies the enduring legend of one of the empire's most infamous military disappearances. The 9th Legion, known as Legio Roman 9 Hispana, was a veteran and respected force, having fought under Julius Caesar and later garrisoning Britain following the Claudian invasion. They were a permanent fixture of the Roman occupation, their presence recorded on stone inscriptions and wooden writing tablets at the fortress of Eboracum, modern-day York. Then, around the year 120 A.D., the entire legion, comprising over 5,000 heavily armed men, simply vanished from the historical record. The last certain evidence of its existence is a tile stamped with the legion's name, dated to that period, found in York. After that, there is only silence. The 9th was never listed among the legions again, its storied history erased as if it had never been. Theories about its fate have divided historians for generations, creating a schism between two compelling narratives. The traditional and most dramatic theory posits that the legion was annihilated in a catastrophic battle against the fierce Caledonian tribes in what is now Scotland. This story, popularized by books and films, suggests the entire force was ambushed and wiped out in the rugged highlands, their eagle standard lost, their bodies left to the elements. This tale of heroic doom resonates deeply, but a competing theory argues for a more administrative, though no less final, end. Perhaps the 9th was not destroyed but disbanded in disgrace after a severe military setback, its number retired and its surviving troops transferred to other units on the frontier. Some even suggest the legion was relocated to the continent to fight in other wars, only to be ultimately destroyed in the east, its fate in Britain merely a case of poor record-keeping. For centuries, this debate has been fought over ancient texts and fragmented inscriptions, but modern science is finally providing tools to search for physical evidence on the ground and in the bones of the soldiers themselves. The first major breakthrough could come from the sky, using the same LiDAR technology that is revolutionizing archaeology elsewhere. The Roman army was famously regimented, and every night on campaign, they constructed a fortified marching camp, leaving distinct telltale outlines on the landscape, a playing card shape with rounded corners. While many have been plowed over or built upon, their ghostly impressions often remain in the soil, visible only from above. A comprehensive LiDAR survey of southern Scotland and northern England, stripping away forests and modern development, could reveal a chain of these temporary camps. The size and layout of a camp can often be linked to the size of the force that built it. Discovering a line of camps large enough for a full legion, leading north from York and then simply stopping abruptly, would be powerful circumstantial evidence for a military expedition that met a sudden, grim end. This trail of breadcrumbs could chart the 9th's final, fateful march into Caledonian territory. To move from tracing the legion's path to identifying its individual soldiers, we turn to the science of biogeochemistry. If a mass grave from the early 2nd century were ever discovered, a monumental if the remains within could be subjected to isotope analysis. This process reads the chemical signatures locked in tooth enamel and bones, which act as a lifelong geographical diary. The isotope ratios of strontium and oxygen in their teeth would reveal where each soldier spent his childhood. If a significant number of the men in such a grave show isotopic signatures from the Iberian Peninsula, where the ninth was stationed and recruited for decades, it would be a strong indicator that these were indeed Hispana's lost sons. Furthermore, analysis of the bones could tell a story of their final years. A diet rich in certain isotopes of carbon and nitrogen could indicate a sudden shift from a Mediterranean-based diet of wheat and olive oil to a more desperate local diet of barley and native game, a sign of a long campaign cut off from supply lines. This biochemical evidence would provide an intimate personal story of their final struggle. Perhaps the most promising avenue lies not in the field but in the digital realm. The Vindolanda tablets, found at a Roman fort near Hadrian's Wall, are a stunning collection of handwritten ink documents on thin sheets of wood that include military reports, personal letters, and supply requests. They offer a breathtakingly direct window into daily life on the frontier. New fragments are still being discovered and deciphered. Advanced multispectral imaging is now being used to read texts that have faded to the naked eye, sometimes recovering entire letters from what appears to be a blank piece of wood. It is not beyond the realm of possibility that a future fragment, unearthed at Vindolanda or another northern fort, could contain a passing reference to the 9th Legion. A routine order for supplies, a request for reinforcements to join them, or even a panicked message about unrest to the north could provide the crucial timestamp and location that finally breaks the case. The painstaking work of digitizing and cross-referencing every known Roman military record from Britain is creating a searchable database where a single, newly discovered name or unit number could suddenly connect all the dots. The mystery of the Lost Legion may not be solved by a single dramatic find, but by the slow, meticulous work of technology piecing together a story that has been fragmented for nearly 2,000 years. Yet another enigma emerges not from the earth or sea, but from the shadowy world of antiquities and forgery, where a single object can captivate the public imagination and defy easy classification. The crystal skulls are among the most alluring and controversial artifacts to ever grace a museum display. These life-sized carvings, primarily made from clear or milky quartz, were famously presented as ancient Mesoamerican relics, pre-Columbian masterworks of unimaginable skill and mystical significance. The most famous among them, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, was touted as a thing of perfection, so expertly carved that modern tools could not replicate it, allegedly used by Mayan or Aztec priests for esoteric rituals. Their legend grew, fueled by claims of supernatural phenomena and a popular culture that linked them to lost civilizations and alien visitors. Yet for all their fame, a persistent question has always lingered in the background. Are these objects genuine archaeological finds, or are they some of the most successful and beautiful hoaxes ever perpetrated? The evidence for a modern origin is compelling and begins with the historical record, or rather, the lack of one. Not a single crystal skull has ever been documented at a legitimate archaeological excavation. They all simply appeared on the art market in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, most notably through the dealings of a French antiquities trader named Eugène Bobin. This was an era of immense fascination with the exotic cultures of the Americas, and a thriving market existed for pre-Columbian artifacts, creating a powerful financial incentive for skilled forgers. Furthermore, the artistic style of the skulls doesn't perfectly align with any known Mesoamerican tradition. While skulls were indeed potent symbols in Aztec culture, representing death and rebirth, they were typically depicted in a more stylized, graphic manner, not as hyper-realistic, anatomically perfect carvings. The crystal skulls look less like ancient religious objects and more like Victorian-era interpretations of what an ancient religious object should look like, reflecting the romanticized notions of the time rather than authentic indigenous artistry. To move beyond stylistic hunches and historical coincidences, we must turn to the cold, hard evidence locked within the crystal itself. The first and most decisive tool is scanning electron microscopy, or SEM. This powerful technology allows scientists to magnify the surface of the skull thousands of times, revealing details utterly invisible to the naked eye. On a genuinely ancient artifact, one would expect to see signs of wear consistent with its age and purported use. This might include microscopic scratches from being cleaned with abrasive materials over centuries, or a specific pattern of pitting from being buried in the earth. Crucially, an object carved with ancient hand tools would show a chaotic, multidirectional pattern of scratches from the inconsistent pressure of stone, sand, and wood implements. What SEM analysis has revealed on the most famous skulls, however, is a telltale signature of the industrial age: perfectly parallel, uniform grooves left by high-speed rotary wheels coated with industrial diamonds or other abrasives. This type of machining simply did not exist in the pre-Columbian Americas. The presence of these marks is the equivalent of finding a barcode on a Roman gladius. It is an anachronism that points directly to a 19th century workshop. This analysis is further bolstered by tool mark analysis. Different carving techniques leave distinct signatures. Ancient lapidary artists would have used hand-powered drills with solid or tubular bits, along with abrasive sands like jadate or quartz, to slowly and painstakingly grind away material. This process creates irregular, often wavy lines and leaves distinct subsurface fractures around engraved areas. Modern lapidary tools, which began to appear in the mid-19th century, use fast-spinning metal wheels that are much harder and more precise. They leave behind the clean, parallel, and continuous grooves that SEM has detected. Furthermore, an examination of the interior features, like the teeth and eye sockets of the skulls, can reveal the specific size and shape of the drill bits used. The precise, undercut details seen in many crystal skulls would have been impossible to achieve with the simple, straight drills available to ancient Mesoamerican craftspeople, requiring instead the tiny, specialized bits of a modern jeweler. Finally, the very source of the crystal can provide a geological fingerprint that reveals the skull's true history. Different quartz deposits around the world have unique chemical signatures containing trace impurities of elements like aluminum, lithium, or titanium. By using techniques like mass spectrometry, geologists can analyze a small sample of the skull and compare its chemical makeup to known quartz deposits. The quartz sources commonly used by ancient Mesoamerican cultures, such as those in Guatemala and Mexico, are well documented. If a skull's composition matches a quartz vein from Brazil or Madagascar sources that were not accessed by pre-Columbian peoples but were widely exploited in the 19th century, it would provide incontrovertible proof that the raw material, and therefore the artifact itself, could not be ancient. This combination of microscopic surface analysis, mechanical tool mark assessment, and geological sourcing creates a bulletproof scientific case, transforming the crystal skulls from objects of mystical wonder into fascinating artifacts of a different kind. Brilliant examples of 19th century craftsmanship that tell us more about the romanticism and commercialism of the Victorian era. They do about the lost worlds of the Aztecs or the Maya. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, in a remote, sparsely populated region of Siberia near the Podkamennaya-Tunguska River, the sky tore open. A blinding blue-white fireball, brighter than the sun, streaked across the heavens before exploding with a force that would dwarf the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The resulting blast wave, estimated at between 10 and 15 megatons, flattened over 800 square miles of pristine forest, snapping 80 million trees like matchsticks and radiating outward from the epicenter in a haunting butterfly-shaped pattern of destruction. The seismic shock was recorded across Europe and Asia, and the atmospheric disturbance was so profound that for nights afterward, skies as far away as London were aglow with an eerie, silvery light, bright enough to read a newspaper at midnight. Yet, despite this cataclysmic display of raw power, no crater was ever found. The object, whatever it was, had vaporized in a massive airburst several miles above the Earth's surface, leaving behind a century of mystery and a bewildering array of theories to explain the most powerful impact event in recorded history. For decades, the leading theory pointed to a stony asteroid or a comet as the culprit. A comet composed of ice, dust, and rock could have disintegrated completely in the atmosphere, explaining the lack of any substantial impact crater and the presence of noctilucent clouds, which are often linked to icy cometary debris. An asteroid, perhaps a fragile, porous body, could have behaved similarly, unleashing its entire kinetic energy in a single, devastating atmospheric explosion. However, the absence of any definitive fragments or a telltale chemical residue in the soil left room for more speculative ideas. Some scientists proposed the explosion was caused by a massive release of natural gas from the Earth itself. More fantastical suggestions included a miniature black hole passing through the planet or the catastrophic failure of an alien spacecraft. The case remained open because the event occurred in such an inaccessible location. By the time the first scientific expedition reached the site in 1927, led by the determined Leonid Kulik, any immediate evidence had been weathered away or buried by time. We were left with a spectacular effect but no clear cause. Today, we no longer have to rely on a century-old crime scene report. Modern technology allows us to conduct a new, virtual investigation, searching for evidence the original researchers could never have imagined. The first clue lies not in the sky but deep within the soil of the Tunguska Basin. If the object was a comet, it would have left behind a specific chemical signature, a layer enriched with elements like iridium and other platinum group metals, along with unique isotopes of hydrogen and nitrogen trapped in the peat. If it was a stony asteroid, the soil would contain microscopic spherules, tiny droplets of melted rock that condensed in the air after the blast. Advanced core sampling of the peat bogs, which have been meticulously accumulating layers of sediment since the event, acts as a perfect time capsule. By extracting deep cores and subjecting them to neutron activation analysis and mass spectrometry, scientists can pinpoint the exact layer from 1908 and analyze its atomic composition with incredible precision, finally identifying the chemical fingerprint of the impacting body and putting the comet versus asteroid debate to rest. Beyond the chemistry of the soil, the trees themselves are silent witnesses that have been recording their testimony for over a century. The flattened forest is now a thriving young woodland, but the older, surviving trees on the periphery still bear the scars. Dendrochronology, the science of tree ring dating, provides a year-by-year diary of the event's aftermath. Trees that were not blown over had their growth severely stunted by the blast, the trauma creating a narrow, dense ring for 1909. By taking core samples from hundreds of these ancient survivors and building a master chronology, scientists can map the precise direction and intensity of the blast wave. Furthermore, the rings hold another secret, a potential isotopic anomaly. The immense heat and energy of the explosion could have fused atmospheric nitrogen into carbon-14, a heavier radioactive isotope of carbon. Trees that grew in the years immediately following the event should show a distinct temporary spike in carbon-14 within their rings. Finding this spike would be a smoking gun, providing a physical, quantifiable measure of the energy released and further confirming the airburst theory. Finally, we can use the power of computational modeling to run the event in reverse. Astronomers have developed sophisticated software that can simulate the passage of asteroids and comets through the solar system. By inputting the known parameters from Tunguska, the estimated size, speed, and angle of impact, these models can trace the object's path backwards through time, potentially linking it to a known asteroid family or cometary stream. This is where modern asteroid tracking programs like Pan-STARRS in Hawaii become crucial. By building a vast catalog of near-Earth objects and their orbits, we can search for potential siblings or remnants of the Tunguska object. If the models can identify a specific family of asteroids with orbits that intersect Earth's path and compositions that match the soil sample data, we can not only solve the Tunguska mystery, but also identify and potentially predict other similar threats, transforming a historical whodunit into a vital tool for planetary defense. The Tunguska event serves as a stark warning of our vulnerability to cosmic impacts, and by applying these 21st century forensic techniques, we are finally closing the file on this colossal explosion, turning a century of speculation into a definitive answer written in soil, tree rings, and star charts. Moving from the silent, preserved witnesses of the bog bodies, we plunge into the turbulent waters of the Solent, the strait that separates England from the Isle of Wight, where a king's pride and a nation's hope sank in a matter of minutes. On July 19, 1545, King Henry Roman VIII looked on in horror from the South Sea Castle ramparts as his flagship and the pride of his navy, the Mary Rose, led the English fleet out to engage an invading French armada. As the great ship made a sharp turn to bring its broadside guns to bear, a sudden gust of wind caught its sails. Instead of righting itself, the Mary Rose continued to heel over. The open gun ports, cut too low to the waterline for such aggressive maneuvering, dipped beneath the surface. The sea poured in, and the ship, with nearly 500 men aboard, vanished swiftly beneath the waves. It was a catastrophic and very public loss, a devastating blow to English morale, and a personal humiliation for the king. The official inquiry pointed to French gunfire and crew error, but the true, complex cause of the disaster has been debated for centuries. Was it a fatal design flaw, an inexperienced and overloaded crew, a sudden squall, or a tragic combination of all three? The Mary Rose's unique value lies in its state of preservation. Unlike a wreck scattered across the ocean floor, the ship settled upright into a soft clay seabed that sealed its starboard side in an anaerobic environment, protecting half of the hull and a staggering array of artifacts from decay. This created a 500-year-old time capsule, offering an unprecedented snapshot of Tudor life at sea. The ship's raising in 1982 was a landmark achievement in maritime archaeology, but it was only the beginning of the investigation. Modern technology now allows us to move beyond simply preserving the timbers and to actively reconstruct the ship's final moments with forensic precision. The first step in this digital inquest is to create a perfect virtual replica of the vessel as it was on that fateful day. Using high-resolution, three-dimensional laser scanning and photogrammetry, every surviving plank, frame, and bolt of the conserved hull has been meticulously digitized. This model is then fused with historical records, including a detailed inventory of the ship's contents taken after its sinking, to create a full, weighted digital twin. This isn't just a visual model, it's an engineering simulation that understands the ship's center of gravity, its weight distribution, and its structural stresses. This digital twin becomes the centerpiece for a series of sophisticated stability tests run in virtual reality and fluid dynamic software. Naval architects can input different loading scenarios based on the recovered artifacts. The ship was heavily modified late in its life to carry more heavy bronze cannons. Was it top-heavy? The model can calculate the exact effect of this added weight high in the hull. The archaeological record shows the ship was packed with extra soldiers and their equipment for the battle, far beyond its standard complement. Did this human cargo, all crowded onto the decks, raise the center of gravity just enough to make the ship unstable? The software can simulate the force of a sudden gust of wind hitting the sails at the exact angle historians believe occurred. By running thousands of these simulations, each with a slight variation in weight, wind speed, and wave height, scientists can identify the precise combination of factors that would have pushed the Mary Rose past its point of no return, transforming a list of possibilities into a probable sequence of events. To ground these digital experiments in reality, we can turn to another field of science, paleoclimatology. the study of past weather patterns has advanced dramatically. By analyzing core samples from peat bogs and lake sediments in southern England, scientists can identify layers of sediment deposited in 1545. The presence of specific isotopes or a layer of particularly fine silt could indicate a period of intense storm activity, corroborating the historical accounts of rough weather that day. Furthermore, by studying the growth rings of ancient trees from the region, dendrochronologists can identify years of stress caused by high winds and salt spray, potentially pinpointing the summer of 1545 as unusually tempestuous. This environmental data provides the crucial context for the digital model, telling us not just what the ship could do, but what the weather was doing, adding a powerful layer of corroborating evidence to the simulation. Finally, the human element of the tragedy can be investigated through the remains of the crew themselves. The skeletons recovered from the wreck site are a treasure trove of biographical data. Isotope analysis of their teeth reveals where they grew up, showing that the crew was a diverse mix from across England and even mainland Europe, not all seasoned sailors. Analysis of their bones tells stories of their lives. Many show signs of old injuries, arthritis, and conditions like vitamin D deficiency, painting a picture of a hard life. Critically, the distribution of the remains can provide clues about the final seconds. Were most of the men found trapped at their battle stations, suggesting they had no warning? Or were they clustered near potential escape routes, indicating a desperate scramble? This physical evidence of the crew's final positions, combined with the engineering data from the virtual model and the climate history from the environment, allows us to weave together a comprehensive and deeply human narrative of the disaster, finally answering the question of how and why Henry Roman VIII mighty warship met its watery grave. Deep beneath the ancient stones of the Moscow Kremlin lies a legend that has tantalized historians and treasure hunters for centuries: the lost library of Ivan the Terrible. This wasn't just any collection of books, it was reputed to be the most magnificent library in all of Europe, a vast trove of knowledge inherited from the Byzantine emperors. The story begins with Ivan's grandmother, Sophia Paleolog, a niece of the last Byzantine emperor. She is said to have brought this priceless collection to Moscow as part of her dowry, a library filled with unique classical texts, philosophical works, and religious manuscripts that had been lost to the Western world after the fall of Constantinople. Ivan the Terrible, a Tsar known for his deep intellect and paralyzing paranoia, was a fervent bibliophile who cherished this collection. According to persistent accounts from foreign diplomats and his own contemporaries, he would occasionally show off a volume or two to honored guests, but the library's full extent was always kept a closely guarded secret. After his death in 1584, the entire collection vanished without a trace, leading to 400 years of speculation. Did it ever truly exist, and if so, was it hidden away in a secret chamber to protect it from fire and invaders, only for the knowledge of its location to die with the paranoid Tsar? The search for this legendary library has followed countless dead ends, from obsessive digs in the 19th century to wild theories placing it in distant monasteries. The most compelling and persistent theory, however, places the library right under our feet in the very heart of Moscow. The Kremlin is not just a palace, it's a labyrinthine complex built atop centuries of older structures, a warren of hidden passages, sealed chambers, and forgotten dungeons constructed during Ivan's reign. His own personal apartments were riddled with secret rooms and stairways, perfect for a ruler who trusted no one. This is where modern technology offers a revolutionary approach, allowing us to map this hidden world without ever swinging a pickaxe. The investigation would begin with a comprehensive ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, survey of the Kremlin's oldest sections, particularly the areas beneath the Tsar's former Terem Palace and the secret gardens. GPR works by sending high-frequency radio waves into the ground and measuring the signals that bounce back. different materials, solid bedrock, a brick wall, a hollow void reflect these waves in unique ways. By systematically scanning the basements and foundations, researchers could build a detailed three-dimensional sonar map of the subsurface, revealing the ghostly outlines of any man-made anomalies hidden behind walls or beneath floors. A large rectangular void detected deep underground, inaccessible from any known corridor, would instantly become the most promising target in the centuries-long search. But GPR can only tell us the shape and depth of an anomaly. It can't tell us what's inside. To solve that part of the puzzle, we would turn to even more delicate technology. Once a promising void is identified, the next step would be to locate the thinnest point of the wall separating it from a known Kremlin passageway. Using a diamond-tipped core drill, engineers could bore a tiny, inch-wide hole through the ancient brick and mortar. Through this minuscule opening, they could then insert a flexible, fiber-optic endoscopic camera. This is the same technology surgeons use to explore the human body, and it would allow archaeologists to see into a sealed chamber that hasn't been touched in over 4 centuries. The camera's high-definition feed could reveal everything. Is the space empty, filled with rubble, or does the light glint off the metal clasps of decaying wooden chests? The endoscope could also be equipped with environmental sensors to sample the air inside, analyzing its composition. A low-oxygen, high-nitrogen environment would be ideal for preserving organic materials like parchment and leather, offering hope that the contents might have survived the centuries. This minimally invasive technique respects the historical integrity of the site while satisfying our burning curiosity. The final layer of this high-tech search would involve creating a perfect digital twin of the entire Kremlin complex. Using a combination of three-dimensional laser scanning and historical building information modeling, architects and historians could collaborate to create an incredibly detailed virtual reality model of the fortress. This model wouldn't just be a copy of what we see today. It would integrate centuries of architectural plans, builders' diaries, and historical accounts of renovations and repairs. By cross-referencing the GPR data with this historical VR model, researchers could identify architectural inconsistencies. A wall that is mysteriously thicker than the plans indicate, a staircase that dead ends for no reason, or a floor plan that shows a room that shouldn't exist according to the structural supports. This digital archaeology allows us to peel back the layers of construction added over hundreds of years, virtually reconstructing the Kremlin as it stood in Ivan the Terrible's time. Following these digital clues could lead us to a forgotten archway since bricked over or a trapdoor concealed beneath centuries of flooring. Finding the lost library would be more than just a spectacular treasure hunt. It would be one of the greatest cultural discoveries in history, potentially recovering ancient Greek plays, lost Roman histories, and philosophical texts that could fundamentally reshape our understanding of the classical world and the intellectual life of one of history's most fearsome rulers. Of all the zones of mystery we have explored, perhaps none has captured the public imagination quite like the infamous Bermuda Triangle. This loosely defined region in the western part of the North Atlantic Ocean, bounded by points in Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico, has been the setting for countless stories of ships and aircraft vanishing without a trace, often in calm weather and without sending a distress signal. The legend grew from a series of high-profile incidents like the disappearance of Flight 19 in 1945, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy Avenger torpedo bombers on a training mission, along with the rescue plane sent to find them. The sheer volume of tales, amplified by books and documentaries, painted a picture of a place where the normal laws of physics and navigation simply didn't apply, a vortex of doom that swallowed the unwary. For decades, the explanations have been split between the scientific and the sensational. On the more grounded side, one of the most compelling theories involves the sudden release of methane hydrates from the seafloor. Vast deposits of this ice-like solidified natural gas exist under immense pressure in the sediment. A tectonic slip or underwater landslide could cause these deposits to destabilize, transforming instantly from solid to gas and erupting in a massive, bubbling plume. This would drastically reduce the density of the water directly beneath a ship, causing it to lose buoyancy and sink in a matter of seconds. For aircraft flying low overhead, the methane could rise into the air, creating a dangerously volatile mixture that could stall engines or even ignite. Another scientific theory points to the area's unusual magnetic properties. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north align, which can cause confusion in compass readings if navigators are unaware, potentially leading them far off course into treacherous waters. Yet, for all the compelling theories, the true revolution in understanding this legendary area is coming from a fleet of modern technologies that treat the ocean not as a mystical void, but as a complex system to be measured and mapped. The first key is advanced satellite oceanography. Satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar can now constantly monitor vast swaths of the ocean surface day and night through cloud cover. They can detect the faint, telltale signatures of rogue waves, massive, spontaneous walls of water that can reach heights of 80 feet or more, which were long thought to be mythical but are now known to be a very real maritime hazard. By analyzing historical satellite data, scientists can determine if the Bermuda Triangle is a hotspot for these freak waves, which could easily overwhelm even a large vessel without warning. These same satellites can also pinpoint the precise locations of large methane hydrate deposits on the seafloor, allowing researchers to correlate past disappearances with areas of high geological activity. Beneath the waves, the search for answers continues with autonomous underwater drones and deep-sea submersibles. The deep ocean floor within the triangle is a vast, unexplored wilderness of trenches and abyssal plains. Modern side-scan sonar and multi-beam echo sounders mounted on AUVs can now methodically map this terrain with centimeter-level accuracy. These robotic explorers are the perfect tool for finally finding the wreckage of vessels like the SS Marine Sulphur Queen or the USS Cyclops, which vanished in the region. Discovering these wrecks and forensically examining their condition on the seabed could provide the ultimate closure to these cold cases. A ship broken apart on a reef suggests navigational error. One found intact and resting peacefully on the bottom points toward a sudden, catastrophic event like a hull rupture or an explosion. Each discovered wreck is a data point helping to replace legend with evidence. Finally, we can use the immense power of supercomputers to recreate the past. By inputting vast amounts of historical weather data, ocean current information, and atmospheric records into complex climate models, scientists can run high-resolution simulations of the conditions on the exact days and locations of famous disappearances. This digital time travel can reveal if a sudden, unpredictable microburst of wind struck a plane, or if a series of waves converged at the exact wrong moment to create a temporary rogue wave of colossal size. This approach moves us beyond vague speculation and allows us to test specific scenarios with scientific rigor. The enduring mystery of the Bermuda Triangle is not a failure of science, but an invitation for it to shine. By applying satellite monitoring, robotic exploration, and atmospheric modeling, we are systematically dismantling the myth and revealing the true, complex, and often dangerous nature of this patch of ocean, proving that reality, with its volatile weather and powerful geology, is compelling enough without needing to invent a single supernatural explanation. And so our journey through time and mystery brings us to a powerful realization. From the vanished settlers of Roanoke to the sunken secrets of the Mary Rose, from the genetic fingerprint of a Victorian killer to the cosmic whisper of the WOW signal, a single thread connects them all. The once insurmountable barriers of time, decay, and lost evidence are now crumbling before a new arsenal of tools. DNA analysis can extract stories from a single strand of hair or a centuries-old stain. LiDAR can strip away dense forest canopies to reveal the ghostly outlines of lost cities and forgotten pathways. Artificial intelligence can process millions of data points in seconds, finding patterns in ancient scripts or genetic codes that would take a human researcher a lifetime to see. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced chemical spectrometry are acting as a collective time machine, allowing us to investigate the past with a precision that would have seemed like pure magic to the historians of just a generation ago. This is not just about solving puzzles for the sake of it. Each of these 30 mysteries represents a missing chapter in the grand story of humanity. Every time we use modern technology to answer a historical question, we are reclaiming a piece of our shared heritage. We are giving voice to the silenced, restoring context to the fragmented, and replacing myth with understanding. The future of historical discovery is no longer confined to dusty archives and painstaking digs with a trowel and brush. It is a multidisciplinary adventure, a collaboration between archaeologists, geneticists, computer scientists, and engineers, all working together to illuminate the shadows of the past. We are on the cusp of a golden age of historical investigation, where the stories we tell about ourselves will be richer, more accurate, and more astonishing than ever before. The adventure, however, doesn't end here. This is just the beginning. Now we want to hear from you. If you could choose one of these 30 mysteries for modern science to solve tomorrow, which would it be? Would you use genetic genealogy to finally unmask Jack the Ripper? Would you send a fleet of drones to scan the Mongolian steppe for the tomb of Genghis Khan? Or would you train an AI to crack the Voynich manuscript's code once and for all? Let us know your pick down in the comments. We're genuinely excited to see which chapter of history you're most passionate about unlocking. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the past with the tools of the future, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Our channel is dedicated to exploring the biggest questions and the most fascinating investigations, where we never stop asking what if, and we never stop searching for answers.